Hey Skyfarers, and welcome to Aethercast, the Kharadron Overlords podcast, where today we're prepping you on how to beat Nurgle with your Kharadron Overlords army. But before we do, let's meet the team for tonight's show and have a little chat about the news. So we have our regular on the show, Endrin Master turned tree surgeon to the Garden of Nurgle, Mr. Matt Barker.
Nice to be here, everybody. Thanks for having me on again, Lee.
Thank you very much for coming on, Matt. And special guest, you might have already noticed him on the thumbnail, Mr. Paul Conti, the putrid Nerd King himself from Radio Free Hammeral.
Hey, what's up, nerds? How's it going?
Thank you very much for coming on, Paul. Thanks
for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And rounding out the Dwarden part of the show, the avatar of Grombrindle himself, Mr. Max Bowman, Dwarden Max.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
All good, thank you. How are you, Max?
I'm good. Planning to play a first real-life game tomorrow in ages, so I'm quickly assembling Skywardens as we speak.
Yeah. But it seems like all of a sudden, like real life games will be happening soon. I even have tickets for a tournament.
I recently signed up for an RTT and a GT in real life. This is amazing. You can play this game. Did you get? No, you don't just have to talk about it and write lists. You can actually play it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not all virtual games anymore. I've actually done that. So no, it's I don't know. It's almost like a shock to the system, but it's cool.
Where are those dice? Where's the rulebook? How does this work?
Yeah,
what's going to be a shock to the system is the amount of beer I drink at the first tournament I actually go to, like the first GT I go to.
Just remember to lift the mask before you drink.
Yeah, yeah, that could be problematic.
I never did get used to drinking beer through a straw.
Oh no.
That's awkward.
That's no.
So a little bit of news that we have. The reason, obviously, what you might have noticed from our introduction, that we are missing our gunnery sergeant and thunderer from down under. That's because Kron is currently playing in a tournament in Victoria, in Australia. So we talked about the lists being taken last week on the show. So Kron is currently 3-0, and they're about to start day 2. The other players scored.
He said his round 3 opponent conceded in turn 1.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, the end of
round 2 was over after 2 rounds, I think.
Dean Rossiter, whose list we looked at last week, he's 2-1 at the moment. Just trying to find them all.
How's Godric doing?
Well, actually, there was so because when we spoke about Dave's list, we said that obviously we didn't think he would win game 1 because he was up against 160 bodies on that were battle line on.
Yeah.
But they actually redrew the list, so he didn't play against the matchups. So he didn't play against that. So he currently has 1 win, a draw, and a loss. The draw being on Knife to the Heart. And then last but not least, if I can find him, Ian is on 1 win and unfortunately 2 losses.
Can you draw? How do you draw on Knife to the Heart?
No one captures both.
Yeah, and they must obviously not have auxiliaries.
Secondaries, yeah, that's what Okay.
So no, but they're about to start day 2. So good luck to all the Kharadron Overlords players there.
Let's go, Alex.
Yeah.
Kill Techless.
Yes. Kron has got Luminef first. So
Spoiler alert: he's going to target Techless because that's the only thing in that army that actually does anything.
Yeah.
Well,
archers are pretty good too, but
he only has 20. So.
Oh.
2 units of 10 as well, which is a bit unusual, I think. But I don't know. So I think that's all the news because Games Workshop haven't done anything, have they?
We know there's a preview coming next Saturday.
Oh,
a new one, also with Age of Sigma. I expect we'll see the Bone Reaper Underworld's warband,
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen some shadow cutouts, and one looks like a bony archer. And something else that's not distinguishable, maybe some vampires. Who knows?
Oh, please. I've got like 4 or 5 Games Workshop gift cards just waiting to pre-order like a boss when vampires come out.
Yeah, there could be something Be'lakor related, maybe, because we've seen Be'lakor.
Okay. Yeah, we've seen big Be'lakor model.
Mm-hmm. Any hopes for any Nurgle stuff, Paul?
I almost don't want a new book. Like, I'm happy with the book we have and continually getting like supplements through other things. Like Slaves to Darkness got a new book. Like, great. Like, half of what's available to Nurgle got updated. Like, something new for Slaves to Darkness. Like, Nurgle gets that too, or it can be an ally. The next Broken Realms is going to have Nurgle in it. Like, just keep supplementing us and don't give us a book. Like don't ruin what's already good there. I don't want like them to go give us the Slanesh treatment. Just keep it the way it is.
Yeah. Well, there are some things
if you want to.
There's some things because it's an older book. There are quite a few things that are because they use older wordings and that they're quite lax. So you've got a lot of things that are just within, or quite like a lot of things are within 14 inches, which is actually massive compared to like being wholly within 12 or something that a lot of armies have. So a lot of changes could potentially be negative for a Nurgle army.
Yeah. Well, if they get the daughters treatment, they'd be fine. It's just updated wording, and that's it.
Yeah. Maybe. But and there is going to be a new battalion. Or battalions? They haven't said exactly how many for each army, but Nurgle are definitely getting at least one battalion in Broken Realms, aren't they?
Yeah.
So,
and I suspect we're probably going to get new like sub allegiances as well, like new sub factions.
Yeah. Okay. Like similar to the Wrath of the Everchosen book.
Right. Because there's 6 of those in like the lore in the Nurgle book, but they only made rules for 4 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
A bit like they had with Daughters of Cain, where there was one that they had in the lore, but they didn't have rules for.
Yep.
So, yeah, well, that could happen.
Is there a Skyport we don't have rules for?
There's a missing Skyport.
Jazz Baz.
Yeah.
I got him.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh dear.
More like Jazz Bad. Am I right?
dear.
Jazz Baz.
Yeah. Oh, there's
About
Barracks.
jazz hands?
Oh dear. But no, for those that don't know that are watching, Barrack Jazz Baz is a custom Skyport that was featured in a battle report in White Dwarf. And the army was actually illegal, and it was just terrible.
Well, we read later
it was straight up illegal, Paul. Yeah.
When they shot the pictures and made the battle report, that was before they shut down for Corona in March, so it was still with old points. That explains why the points were weird, but it doesn't explain why there's only 2 battle lines in the army. So and why the navigator with his Ether Storm can stop Storm Fiends from moving, although they don't fly, so we don't know. Secret tank.
From the company that brought you MetaWatch brings you the competitive KO battle report.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, they didn't say it was competitive, but
I know.
And they didn't say it was match play either, did they? So
no, I don't think so.
No.
Probably was implied though.
Yeah.
That's like the standard default game system, unless you're playing a narrative campaign, or if you're just like, I don't know, want to play open play for some reason.
Yeah. I mean, they propagate that narrative, and open play is super cool and fun all the time. So maybe they meant to show that.
Yeah, well, there's no reason why you can't do narrative, but using the pitch battle rules.
Done.
So,
Unless you want like use Gotrek and bundle Whalebiter and I don't know another name character. Because if it's narrative, they meet up, and you could play Barrack Frame, but in a Stormcast army, I don't know.
So, but we've got a lot to cover, so we should probably move on because we could rant about Barrack.
Avoided the first tangent.
Who spray painted the Lord of Blights here on the title page?
Oh, that was me.
Yeah.
He's just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a creepy fella.
I did it on the show with his coach as well, but nobody noticed.
Oh, that's funny.
That's
funny.
Yeah.
You're assuming we're actually like following the slides,
paying attention.
Sorry. So before we move on to some of the actual slides, let's just explain where we're going to get all our information from. So Matt, you play Kharadron Overlords, but you also play Nurgle.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yep, I mained Nurgle was my main army pretty much, even before a little bit before the first General's Handbook dropped, and so when the first General's Handbook dropped, I think it was in 2016. They were my main army before they had a battle tome, and you had to use the Grand Alliance Chaos rules. And then when they got the battle tome, that's when I really ramped up into more competitive play. Ended up doing really well in the 2019 ITC season, where I was the top ranked Nurgle player in the ITC, which is a huge honor.
And obviously, we know about how you playing Kharadron Overlords because we've had you on the show before.
Right.
Normally played Barrack Monarch and stuff. So you've obviously got a fair bit of knowledge from both sides there. But Paul, you are well known for playing Nurgle. But your channel is called Radio Free Hammeral.
Mm-hmm.
So you get around a little bit, obviously. But then we know you've also done a little bit of Kharadron Overlords as well, because you did a nice series on the Math Hammer and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
I do have a Kharadron Overlords army. I haven't played it actually at all yet because thanks to COVID. Started that army like right when the new book came out, and then everything got locked down. But I've done a lot of like list building with it and stuff like that. A lot of theory hammer, so I'm at least familiar with the book and how it plays and all that.
Yeah. And how long have you been playing Nurgle for?
I picked that up as soon as that battle tome dropped. I was like, I'm all in. Like, this is an awesome concept, and I was there. And I feel like the army's only basically gotten better since the battle tome came out.
Well, because the weird thing about Nurgle is it keeps getting all these additions and stuff. You mentioned about Wrath of the Arbitrator earlier and stuff. So it's the same with most of Chaos in some ways. Getting these additions. So
it's because Chaos has this way of their keywords work a bit differently. So they have their own, Maggot Kitten keyword or Hedonite keyword, but then a lot of things apply to the Chaos God keyword. So Slanesh, Nurgle, and so on. So if you play Chaos, you can draw from so many different sources and so many different books.
But then Nurgle has the extra one with Skaven, where you can use a lot. You can use all the Pestilence stuff has Nurgle. One day Plague Claws will be good.
We had Smoking Horde as well. Most of that's gotten shuffled off to Legends now.
There was a time when the Plague Toads ruled everything because they had that 4-up DPR, the after save or whatever, and people just spammed Plague Toads and you couldn't kill them, and then they would just come back.
Okay. And so for the purposes of tonight's show, we are talking purely about armies aligned to Nurgle, as opposed to something like a Slaves to Darkness army that might have lots of Nurgle units in it and stuff.
So Maggot King of Nurgle.
Yes. As opposed to just any way that Nurgle could be played, because that would be an even longer show.
We'd be here forever.
So maybe if this goes well, we might have to revisit this that subject a bit at some point. So let's get stuck in. and talk about some of their allegiance abilities for Nurgle. So the first thing is the cycle of corruption. So it kind of starts randomly. You roll a dice, but there's 7 points on the thing. So the corrupted regrowth, you can't start on that, which is kind of makes sense because it's healing. It's healing, so you can't heal at the beginning of the game anyway. Yep. And it cycles through these, from wherever you start. So if you start on 6, you'll go to 7, and then to 1. Or if you start on 2, then it'll go to 3, on to 4. And they do different things. So I guess the first question is as a Nurgle players, where are you hoping it's going to land to start with?
3. Not 3. And I roll a 3 every single time. 3 is the worst position to start on, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think 4 is probably the worst position overall. So you get something that's like you're only doing like half of that. So it's doing mortal wounds to your opponent and healing you, but it's not healing you because you have nothing to heal on the first turn. And then the second turn, you're re-rolling enemy battle shocks of 1, which that's not that important. So really it means unless you do something to move the wheel, you have 2 turns of basically nothing.
And on a 5, but even the burgeoning, if you do start roll, it's on a 5 up, it does 1 mortal wound, and so it's really not that impactful. But like Paul said, it follows right into probably the worst one.
Yeah. We should probably explain what these are because most of the people watching are probably Kharadron Overlords players. So we mentioned number 7, which is healing. So it's basically all Nurgle units heal D3 wounds at the start of the hero phase. So they definitely won't start with that one. Number 1 is add 2 to the move characteristic of Nurgle units. That's quite a handy thing in the first battle round if you do get that one to start with. Fecund Vigor, which is number 2, is add 1 to wound rolls in the combat phase. 3, which is the burgeoning, which Matt just mentioned, is you roll a dice for each unit within 1 inch of a terrain feature at the start of the hero phase, and on a 5 or more, then it suffers a mortal wound unless it's Nurgle, in which case it heals.
So one question, if your opponent is also Nurgle, nothing happens.
You'll find that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the things in this book will only apply to Nurgle, or only apply if you're not Nurgle. So if you have a Nurgle mirror match, a lot of weird stuff happens.
Yeah, and because if it's a mirror match, you both use the same cycle of corruption, don't you?
Yes, you do.
So it can't say friendly Nurgle because then it wouldn't work. So it'd be
exactly.
Yeah. So
there's just 1 per game. So or we both have a wheel.
You both share the cycle.
Yeah, you have one wheel.
We can both
manipulate it. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a fun game, though.
Yeah, it would be interesting. But there's also lots of other
I want
things.
this. Nah, let's turn it back. Yeah, that's cool.
There's a lot of other things as well in the we'll get to them in a bit, but things like the Gnarlmaw and stuff. They also sort of a lot of other things, and even spells. I think if they hit Nurgle units,
they just affect.
Do a different thing. So number 4, Plague of Misery is reroll battle shock tests of 1 for enemy units, and then it says excluding Nurgle. So and then 5 is Nauseous Revulsion. Reroll wound rolls of 6 or more for attacks made by enemy units, and that also excludes Nurgle units, and that's in the combat phase.
That is so good. It's so good.
Not something as a KO player though I'd particularly worry about because it's combat phase.
Right, of course.
And the second to last one, because obviously the 7 is the last one, but I did that one first. I did them out of order. Number 6, Rampant Disease. At the start of your hero phase, pick D3 different enemy units, excluding Nurgle units, within 12 inches of each other, and each unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So there's no range on that. Because there couldn't be, because it's just the cycle of corruption isn't on the board anyway. So
It's like a disease spreading through your ranks, essentially, is what's going on there.
Yeah. But yeah, I assume that one, if you get that one, you're probably quite happy with to get it.
Yeah.
I once played a game against a free guild army, but this was before the Cities of Sigmar book, and they had the rocket. They went all in on the rocket storm battery, and I rolled a 6 for my rampant disease, and then just targeted the crew on all 3 rockets and just killed all the crew, and that was it. It was over on the first dice roll. I felt so bad for the dude.
Yeah.
But no, as a Kharadron Overlords player, there's nothing there. To be honest, there's nothing there that really scares me. The move is probably the one I wouldn't want you to get. Although you're going to be moving fairly quick anyway, which is surprising about Nurgle. But
because the 1-inch terrain feature, we're away from terrain features anyway most of the time, because how fly high and hitching works.
Nauseous revulsions only in the combat phase.
To wound. Okay, I think the most annoying would probably be healing, knowing how resilient Nurgle is, and then you finally manage to cause some wounds and then they heal back up.
Yeah, well, the other thing is, so you can manipulate these a bit. Although my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but my understanding is you won't see people manipulating it that much, because they'll be taking other stuff instead. Quite often, or doing other stuff.
Before the Wrath of the Everchosen, which we'll get into, gave Nurgle all their sub-factions, the standard command trait that everybody took was a command trait called Grandfather's Blessing, which allowed you once per game to move the wheel 1 spot forward or backwards. And it happened, what was most important, at the start of the hero phase. So a common trick would be to try to get it on stage 5, because it's a really generally, not against KO, but generally it's really powerful, where you're forcing your opponent to reroll 6s to wound. And then at the start of the battle round, it would naturally go up to 6, and then you'd rain a bunch of mortal wounds on things. And then you would, and since that's at the start of the hero phase, and the trait was at the start of the hero phase, you would automatically tick it back to Nauseous Revulsion, get another round or 2 of rerolling 6s to wound, and then it would tick back to do D3 mortals next turn. So you would basically just keeping it between 5 and 6. If you needed the extra movement, maybe you force it to 1. But basically, it was like, how can I keep it going back and forth between 5 and 6? And that was the... Oh, I see, Lee, you put it right there at the bottom, the command trait.
Yeah, so the command trait, typically you don't see it because of the new sub factions that you got from Wrath of the Everchosen, and it seems like mostly people are taking those. But Thaurogenesis, the spell which lets you choose a place for it to go to, that's part of your spell lore, but it's not a spell you have to choose. Just all of your wizards know it, so it's something to be aware of as a KO player, that if they're on 6, then there's a good chance then they might cast that spell to to put it back, so that next turn it will be on 6 again, essentially. It depends on whatever spells they have to cast, really.
Yeah, and what's tough with that is that it's a 7 to cast, so it's not that reliable unless you have something to boost your spell casting.
Yeah, although that's a common theme with the Nurgle spells anyway, isn't it? A lot of them on 7s.
Well, isn't 7 Nurgle's number?
Yeah.
It is.
Yes.
It's all narrative. I see.
Yeah.
I'd say the one that you're most scared of as a KO player here is probably Rampant Disease, because they can target they can just hit your navigator, your chemist in the boat, and then I think that'll combo well with some of the other abilities that you'll see, namely Rotigus, Plague Squall, where you can essentially have table-wide infinite range D3 mortal wounds to things, and so you get a couple of those popping off, and you're taking out some heroes inside the boat without really getting around the +1 save and the -1 to hit. So
yeah, there's a lot of ways to do mortal wounds, it seems. So, and a lot of them are at range as well.
Right.
So, so that's like, I mean, if a Nurgle player goes first, and then they cast that, and then cast something else, then you could lose your chemist, which means you lose spell in the bottle potentially. So that could be a big deal. So let's move on to.
I agree.
To cover that. So the next thing that you have is summoning, which is all about points. You earn them at the start of the hero phase. You get 3 if you have Nurgle units in the Nurgle territory. An extra 3 if there are Nurgle units in the non-Nurgle territory and the KO players' territory. And then you get 1 extra per territory if there are friendly Nurgle units in that territory but no enemy units. So, for instance, if they have the first turn, the Nurgle player, then you won't have any in the KO player's territory because it's the first turn, and it's the start of the hero phase. So you can't do any shenanigans to get them afterwards. But you also get an extra 1 because there'll be no KO units in your territory as well.
When do you get the trees?
Paul?
You get 1 at deployment, or not at deployment, at setup.
Yeah.
And then if you summon more feculent Gnarlmaws, they come in at the end of the movement phase.
Okay, so you won't benefit from the extra points from trees at the start of the hero phase.
You will benefit from 1 because 1 of them will be on the table before the game starts.
Yeah, the 1, but it's probably no enemy units within 3. Okay.
So basically, you're hoping to roll a 5 or a 6 on that D3 so that you can either, which you'll see, as Lee pointed out at the bottom here, summon units cost 7, 14, 21, 28, 35 points.
Okay, so multiple.
So so for 7 points, you'll see you can get a tree. So you could pop up. So you could start, on your first turn with 2 trees, or maybe a couple of a Nurgling base or whatever. But nothing really dangerous on the first turn. It takes a little time to ramp up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this is, so the tree gives you D3 extra, but it's no enemy models within 3 inches. Now, the interesting thing is it's 3 inches. So if it was an inch, then quite often you'll be getting that D3 against KO because, when we fly high, then you can't land within an inch, but we can land within 3 inches. So there's an interesting thing is we can quite easily stop you getting that D3, but then there's when we get onto it in a minute with the tree, there's potential getting mortal wounds as well. So the enemy player, the KO player from our perspective, wants to be near the tree but also doesn't at the same time. So it forces some decision making. We mentioned that summoning is at the end of the movement phase, so no cheeky shenanigans there of bringing them on and then moving afterwards. I think I understand.
The important thing to point out for Nurgle is that the summoning isn't you're not summoning stuff that is offensively really powerful. You're not summoning huge groups of offensive units or anything like that. What I see most commonly is people summoning 5 Plaguebearers at a time. And just dotting those around the board, and that can be really disruptive to a KO player because they're zoning out your fly high, and they're zoning out your shooting range, and all of those Plaguebearers are -1 to hit against shooting.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is what do you typically summon? But you've answered that. So, but the other thing is, KO typically relies on killing the models on the objectives so that we can then get onto them. And you can just summon models onto the objectives. And, we don't typically have large amounts of bodies or durable bodies for holding objectives. So, if you summon 5 Plaguebearers onto an objective, that could be, very annoying for a KO player.
Right.
And stop us flying high onto it, and if we're already onto it with, a ship, there's more bodies.
So I assume when summoning within 12 inches of a hero, it needs to be 9 inches away from enemy units?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Or a feculent Gnarlmaw max, and something that I've used to great effectiveness. If I have 14 summoning points, what I will do is summon a feculent Gnarlmaw 12 inches away from a hero or another feculent Gnarlmaw, and then use that to summon another block of Plaguebearers. So essentially, you have
like
this
conga line summoning, like
yeah,
Sonic used to do.
exactly, exactly, because you can summon your summon points.
Yep.
Yeah. So would you typically do that with a tree rather than a hero?
Yeah, I think
trees
the
are
first
standard,
hero.
although you don't start at 14, so you would usually use it for a tree.
I've also used it when I have a group of Blightkings and a hero with them. Namely, usually for me, it's Spume and 10 Kings after they've come on, which we'll see later. But then I will move and run in the movement phase, and then at the end of the movement phase, summon a tree that's with it near Spume, who then gives them run and charge.
The other thing is, obviously, with fly high and not being able to land within an inch of terrain, if you're summoning more trees and put them, it's the same thing. It's in some ways it's not as bad as units, because units we have to be 9 inches away, whereas a tree we have to be an inch away. But we can't kill a tree. We can kill units. So you can, if you summon a tree in the right place onto an objective, that if there's already other terrain around, that could basically stop us ever flying high onto that objective. We'd have to fly high and then fly onto it afterwards, potentially. Or
it's a problem that could become a huge problem if you don't see it coming and don't know its potential for basically controlling where you go, where the KO player can go on the board, which is the way the KO wins games, is movement and board control.
Yeah. And obviously, if you summon trees at the beginning, then they're giving you more points next round. And it's just, it could very easily just get out of control for the KO player.
It starts off slow. Yeah, it starts off slow, but then it ramps up really, really annoyingly.
Yeah. But the good thing is, it's very easy for KO to get models into your territory to stop you getting this extra points there.
Yeah, but I think summoning in Nurgle is not as offensive as it was in other armies. I think it's rather. I'm okay with this. Takes you a turn or maybe 2 turns to even get 7 or 14 points. So you're not gonna throw onto the board, 30 more Blightkings.
No, you can't summon Blightkings.
Oh, okay.
Only demons. You can only summon demons.
Okay. Right.
I have in the several years I've played this book, I have only ever summoned one Great Unclean One, which cost 28 points, and that was because I was playing another Nurgle player and I was earning contingent points on their hero phase as well.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's
the Nurgle mirror match sounds a bit crazy.
It sounds very weird. Yeah.
Luckily, we don't have to worry about that as KO players. So that's summoning, and then we mentioned the tree a little bit. So you get a tree with his 3 little eyes. I guess they're probably not eyes, but they look like eyes. So in some ways, when you get it, doesn't matter too much for a KO player, because a KO player doesn't have terrain. With other armies, it might matter a little bit, because you get it. Sometimes it can who gets their terrain first can be important sometimes, but for a KO matchup it doesn't matter. And you can basically put it anywhere on the board, as long as it's more than 1 inch from any other terrain. So
that 1 inch is important, because you can block off places where I can fly high with my Ironclad too.
Yeah, pre-game.
You can already say, there's a spot where the Ironclad could go because of objectives and other terrain. I'm just going to put it in the middle.
Boom.
Yeah, the interesting thing is it's before choosing sides. So, I mean, are you typically putting it in the middle because of that?
I would. That's what I usually do, put it in the middle.
I usually put it in the middle just because its main benefit against most armies that aren't KO are being able to run and charge within 7 inches of it.
Yeah. So moving on to the abilities, you mentioned being able to run and charge. So straight away, that is a big buff for basically free, because it's free because you don't pay any points for terrain. And it's only within, not only within. So you click one model just within, and then all of a sudden that means you get to run and charge. And there are also ways in this army of getting the command ability to run 6 for free and stuff, and you get other bonuses to run as well, and also bonuses to charge. And you've got wizards, so you can cast cogs and stuff. So even though a lot of Nurgle stuff is 4-inch move, a lot of stuff.
Yep.
They're surprisingly quick. Yeah.
Much like just like Zilfin is surprisingly quick little dwarves, Nurgle is surprisingly quick little decaying demon men.
Yeah. It's funny when that those Blight Kings look like they move 4 inches and then they move 11 and charge you.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul brings up a good point, because the way it's worded is in a way that you can move and run and then move and run into range of then being able to charge, because it only affects a unit in the charge phase.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
checking during the charge phase whether or not you can charge.
So from a KO player's perspective, you need to look at where a unit is, then look at where the tree is and go, well, if they run, will they get within 7 inches of the tree, and then will that let them charge? And then how far will they be able to charge from there? That are they in? It's not as simple as are they just close to a tree, because that's easy to work out. It's whether they can move on a tree, and then you also have to think: can they summon a tree, and that to be put near a unit, so that when they run forwards, they will run into range of a tree that isn't currently there.
And they only need to be one model within 7 inches to be able to make that run and charge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, watching out where trees might go and thinking how far units could potentially, what their threat range could be, is potentially quite difficult.
When you summon a tree, how far does the tree need to be away from enemy units?
9 inches.
It's the same 9 inches.
Also 9 inches. Okay. So that's one way you can kind of control where additional trees grow. If you kind of spread out, because it cannot be too close to terrain, it cannot be too close to your units.
Okay.
Yeah, you're almost playing the game that other people usually play against KO.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the other ability it has is Sickness Blossoms, which is at the start of the hero phase, roll a dice for each unit within 3 inches of any feculent armors, and on a 4+, they suffer 1 mortal wound. And it doesn't affect Nurgle. It's only 1 mortal wound, so it's not that bad. And obviously, if you're within 3 inches, then you potentially stop you getting D3 contagion points. So you kind of almost do have to sort of take that tax in some ways of, I'm going to take a mortal wound to stop you getting those contagion points.
Yeah, but what you're putting within 3 inches of that is definitely going to be a question for KO, because if you put like a full ship, well, now I'm rolling against your ship and the Thunderers inside and whatever hero.
Yeah, because it's each unit, so it's not one unit within range. So you put a ship in range, and it's the same problem we have with Bender spells is everything inside the ship gets affected, and it's not 1 mortal wound is not a big deal for an ironclad, but for your chemist, it is potentially, or for for your units.
My navigator with my Gale Force staff trying to keep a horde of Blight Kings from charging me. Yeah, that would be awful.
And even just forcing a battle shock test on Thunderers.
Yeah.
Good point. Really good point.
So, I mean, is there anything
on Thunderers? They have 2 wounds.
But they could be. You could have 1 on a wound already and stuff.
And their bravery 7, so yeah.
I mean,
and they can reroll with the honor of Stone Bearer, whatever he's called.
Yeah. It depends. Right? I mean, if they've been charged and stuff, and they take another wound, it can get relevant, can't it? So, we don't like mortal wounds anyway.
No, but I think
no one likes taking
1 mortal wound on a 4+, It's okay. It's not.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. It's on a 4+, so it's almost like if you the choice between that and giving you contagion points is I'm almost willing to take it. I just, if I can make it so I'm only taking it with one model rather than the ship plus everything inside it, then that's better.
But trust me, I own 3 Feculent Gnarlmaws, and I've never needed more than that. I mean, there's only been maybe most games I have 3 on the board. Most of the time it's 2. If I have 7 contagion points, there are a little bit. I'm summoning 5 Plaguebearers. They're infinitely, because they simply score points. There's bigger. You can have, it's essentially a 10-inch line where you can have no fly highs. So 5 Plaguebearers are going to be infinitely more scary to a KO player unless you're worried about a run and charge. That's really, I think, the biggest thing that is you're going to be worried about is having Blightkings just rocket up the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's. They're the things that are common that all Nurgle armies will have in terms of allegiance abilities. Let's move on to some units that you're likely to see in
Look at
some
that
Nurgle
beautiful
armies.
man.
Yeah.
That's one reason why I never got Nurgle. It's just disgusting.
I love it. I love it.
It's just not my thing. It's
Look
just
at that sexy piece. Look at his tongue.
It's just like, even like there's a mouth on the end of the tongue and an eye, and then the mouth on the end of the tongue has its own tongue.
No. This freaks me out. No.
Okay, so Great Unclean Ones. Is it fair to say you don't see them in every army? But
Definitely not.
No, but I don't know. When I think of Nurgle, that's one of the things I think of if it's a Great Unclean One. It's almost like a centerpiece model, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, and he's a big old boy. 16 wounds, 4+ save, 5+ damage prevention roll on wounds and mortal wounds, D3 healing, and also they can make you take mortal wounds in the combat phase as well. But it's hard to kill, and that's a common theme amongst your heroes, at least compared to other armies. You face it with some armies, and then they've got 5 wound heroes, it's like a 5+ or 6+ save, no DPR, and then you're talking about hero, 4+ save, 16 wounds.
And I think you KO players might be looking at this war scroll, the things you've laid out here, Lee. 16 wounds, 4+, 5+ DPR. He auto heals 3 or D3 in the hero phase, but what you're not seeing are some of the little accoutrements to how resilient he can be. There's an artifact, the Endless Gift. For every wound that the Great Unclean One took that turn, at the Battle Shock phase on a 4-up, you count up all those wounds he took that turn. On a 4-up, you heal that many back. There's another artifact that gives him the 4+ armor save, rerollable 4+ armor save on top of that. Blightkings have a natural ability on a 6. If they're nearby the Great Unclean One, you can heal another D3 wounds. You can use the D3 heal from the Cycle of Corruption. So you could potentially have a Great Unclean One. You want to talk about like a Ironclad healing up and then flying away? You could potentially have a Great Unclean One down almost to death, and then boom, 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 a couple dice rolls, and he's back up to full health.
Right.
Yeah. I only ever played Nurgle with my Fire Slayers. I ran my Hearthguard into him. I think I caused like 3 wounds. And we spoke about this, how good Hearthguard Berserkers are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, nah.
And let me just shut this down right now. Plague Wind does not heal the spell that he has on his War Scroll. I have had so many people ask if Plague Wind will allow him to heal himself because he draws a line from his base out 14 inches. It does not. There's no way. It doesn't work like that. Stop asking that question, please.
Yeah.
Right. So is that something as a KO player we need to be aware of if like someone might try and do? And we need to say, look, no, you can't, and get the TO over if they try to, or is it?
I think Plague Wind is something that's important for KO players to take note of, because it's drawing a line and doing D3 mortal wounds to all units along that line that aren't Nurgle. So if you put a ship within 14 inches of a Great Unclean One, you're potentially getting the ship and everything inside it with D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah. It's the same. Yeah, it's the same problem as the theFeculent Gnarlmaw that we just mentioned, and the spells. So
and the rampant disease on the cycle for D3 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
But the healing himself with it, is that like cut and dry? He definitely can't. Is that something that sometimes gets ruled differently in different tournaments, or
no? He just heals D3 every turn.
No, with Plague Wind.
I've seen a lot of people ask that in like WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. Maybe more so when the book was new, or but yeah, I think it's a pretty accepted norm, and I'm sure there's some rule precedent somewhere that would stop it. But it just, when you draw a line from a model to the point of the battlefield, it's not as if it's an AoE which you're in range of. It's not casting a bubble which you're also in range of. It's from his base to because you don't draw. The line doesn't pass over the Great Unclean One. It goes from his base out. So I've just seen a lot of people ask that question, and I just wanted to clear that up. And again, for KO players who find it, that it just doesn't work like that. So
yeah. So if someone tries to do it, we need to call them out on it if they try and do that.
Basically. Oh yeah, definitely.
That doesn't work that way. So I mean, one of the big things that I noticed about the War Scroll, and you might not always see it because it's based on a weapon option, but the bell gives +3 movement. Will Nurgle players always take the bell, or mostly take the bell, or?
I think if you are playing just one Great Unclean One, you're usually going to take the bell and the Bile Blade. If you are, or you're going to take Rotigus, right? It's the named Great Unclean One. The alternate build of this with just melee weapons, the sword and the flail, I really don't think I have ever seen that outside of a Thricefold Befoulment list, which is their battalion that lets you run 3 Great Unclean Ones and give them all kinds of buffs.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've seen the melee build. So I don't think I've ever even heard of somebody running it any different than Bell and Bile Blade if they're just running a solo Great Unclean One.
Yeah.
The Bile Blade gives you a +1 to cast if you immediately take a mortal wound. It's called Putrid Offering. So being able to project out +3 movement and then have a +1 to cast where you take a wound but then immediately heal that wound, at least just one of them, it's going to be infinitely more competitive choice than 4 attacks that hit on force.
So from the perspective of a KO player, he's giving out an aura buff of +3 move. He's hard to kill, and he's a 2-cast wizard with +1 to cast.
Yes.
And his spell, Plague Wind, could potentially be very damaging if you're in your ship.
The TLDR on him is he's an incredibly durable hero, caster, and support piece.
Okay, so my question on him is, because Razor Tree Productions in the chat says he's priced so close to Croak, he must be right. So I mean, he doesn't look like he's on Croak's level, and he's obviously hard to kill, like Croak is. Probably actually slightly easier to kill than Croak, depending on how many Saurus are near Croak. But is he? Like it's not as important to kill him as it is to kill Croak, is it? So is it worth a KO player putting in the effort to go through those 16 wounds with the 4+ save and the 5+ TPR?
I would say from the Nurgle player perspective, if you start as a KO player laying fire into my Great Unclean One, that's a good day for me.
Right, okay.
I want to go after that all day, because it's hard to kill. And those are shots that are not going into my Blight Kings, and that makes me happy.
Okay, so the hot take is don't shoot the Great Unclean One.
Ignore the potato.
Yeah,
I mean, he just soaks up so much damage, and then there's so, like I said, it's not just the D3 heals on his War Scroll. It's the D3 heals from the from the Allegiance ability. It's the D3 heals from the Blightkings. It's maybe the D3 heal from another Great Unclean One with Plague Wind. There's just there's a number of healing sources that your damage is just wasted. Okay,
so if you're thinking, just shoot the heroes, not this one. Yeah, so let's move on. We need to go through these a bit quicker, I think, actually, because we're nearly an hour already.
I agree.
So Pusgoyle Blightlords and the Lord of Afflictions. They look
amazing models.
That they are pretty cool looking, actually. My impression is you don't see these very often.
They suffer from the same affliction as Morghast in a Death Army or an Ossiarch Bone Reaper army, but even maybe a little bit more so, where these guys, they don't have the punchiness that Morghast do, so they can't clear an objective, but then they also can't hold an objective because it's only 2 models. And they're pretty expensive at 190 points. They used to be, I believe, 200 points, and before that, 220. So... if you took 2 of them, that was cute. And then if you took 4 of them, that's almost a quarter. That used to be almost a quarter of your army. And so it was just, they just didn't really have a role. That 400 points was better spent elsewhere.
So the
if
thing
you
that can
see them, though, they can be a major threat to you.
Yeah.
Especially Kharadron Overlords.
Yes.
Because the thing about them is they're quick. And now they're not that quick on their War Scroll because they're 8-inch move and fly. But then, as we've mentioned, we said about how the 4-inch move guys can get quick. Well, you've got 8-inch guys, and you make them quicker, then they're obviously quicker than the 4-inch guys made quicker. And the Lord Afflictions can give them an extra 8-inch to move. So basically doubles their movement because they're 8-inch normally. So that's 16-inch move. If you've got a Great Unclean One nearby, then that's 19-inch move. And then potentially run and charge as well. They're getting places.
Yep.
And then they're also, because they're Nurgle, they're hard to kill because they're 7 wounds, 4+ save, and they've got 5+ DPR as well. But we're not likely to see them, are we?
You're not likely to see them because they're more points than Blightkings are, and they're kind of occupying the same space in a lot of ways as Blightkings. Like, they don't have the kind of utility that Blightkings do most of the time. So people just don't run them because it's like I could spend 190 points on these, or I could spend 140 points on 5 Blightkings.
Yeah. And the thing is, they're quick, but you can make Blightkings quicker with some of the ways we've already talked about. So
without spending a command point.
Yeah. So let's.
It's so funny. You're going to find, although that Lord of Afflictions is a really great hero that has some play because he has the demon keyword. So that comes in handy with some artifacts that we're going to talk about later. But yeah, the common theme in this book is Blightkings almost as a currency. Like, well, I could buy this, but I could also buy this many Blightkings.
Right. Blightkings are like your Zilfin. It's like when you write a list in KR, it's like, would it be better if it was Zilfin? And it's like when you're choosing units, it's like, would it be better if I just got Blightkings? Basically. Yeah. So Plaguebearers, you mentioned them earlier about summoning, and you mentioned that they're -1 to hit. Now, the thing with them is they're -1 to hit in shooting, but it's actually only in the shooting phase. Right. Not that KO anymore have ways of shooting outside of the shooting phase, but I guess that could potentially become relevant at some point. But if you have 20 or more models in the unit, they become -2 to hit in shooting and -1 to hit in melee.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. On the face of it, they're not that durable because they have a 5+ save, but then they do have a 5+ DPR on wounds and mortal wounds. So, they get a 5+ save after, that doesn't worry about your rend, and then you're -2 to hit at shooting them as well, and then they get to re-roll save ones of 1 if they're within 7 inches of a friendly Nurgle demon hero, and then if you do kill them a bit, unmodified battle shock rolls of 1, no models flee, and they get to add D6 models to the unit.
Yes, and they have Bravery 10. So even if you don't force a battle shock check, you can still take one and try to get the one. So you can, if you have a 10-man unit and you kill one Plaguebearer, thank you. I get a 16% chance to get however many Plaguebearers back.
Yeah, and it's also there's a funny thing in the wording of that War Scroll that it's not returning slain models, it's adding whatever models to the unit. So if you start with 30, one dies, roll a battle shock test of 1 and roll a 6 on that die, then you have a unit of 35 Plaguebearers.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, you think you get them down past that 20-man unit threshold, and then they add D6, and then they go back to -2 to hit. I'm just going to check this thing about Battle Shock. So, are you saying that I thought you only took Battle Shock if you lost models?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. But you don't. You can take. I believe I could be wrong. I'm wrong plenty of times every day. But I believe you can take a battle shock check even if it's not possible for you to fail, as long as you took.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So you have to have. I've just got the rules up. You have to have had models slain in the unit that turn.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, as you said, even if it was mathematically impossible for them to lose any,
you
they still
roll
take the
that.
test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're still rolling.
It's the same what pink horrors do.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
With the standard bear, and on the one they get D6 back.
So
add D6.
And then keep in mind when you summon 5 Plaguebearers, you're summoning it just 5 Plaguebearers, so you can have the standard bearer, the musician, the champion. The champion doesn't matter, and then two regular goons. But really, having 5 Plaguebearers and then you kill one, and then you get D6 back, and now that can be thanks for the nearly 10-man squad now.
And when you add the D6 models to the unit, I assume you can string them out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
where you want.
Yeah. Onto objectives, zoning out space to stop ships landing. Yeah.
Into combat.
Into range of a hero to get a buff of some sort.
Yeah, oftentimes it's not great just to be like, okay, I'll fire this errant drill cannon into the Plaguebearers. It's often not wise just to throw shots into them just because. So just watch out for that.
Yeah, because the other thing is you're not likely to hit them anyway because -2 to hit, or if it's 5 -1. But the saving grace with these guys is they don't do any damage much, really, do they?
Oh,
it takes a lot.
No.
It takes a lot for them to be able to do damage, but typically, no.
So
yeah, they're throwing 1 attack each. They have a 1-inch range on their melee weapons, and they are
32.
So they're doing nothing.
Yeah, so they're not fighting in 2 ranks, and but they're just going to sit on objectives and be lots of bodies and hard to kill to shoot off. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and their standard movement, is it 4?
What's that?
The standard movement?
4, yeah.
It's 4.
Yeah, but as we said, they've got ways of getting quicker, so they can run onto objectives, and they start within range of the Great Unclean One, then they get 7, and so they will get onto objectives. So let's move on to something we've mentioned as something you definitely will see in an army.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're going to see them? I'm not.
Oh,
So, Putrid Blightkings, you said are like the currency of Nurgle.
Yeah, I think so. They really are.
So, I mean,
for a couple of reasons here.
Yeah. So, the things that I've noted or summarized is they're 4 wounds each, which just think about that for 140 points. A 5-man unit is 20 wounds. The 20 wounds for 140 points is actually pretty good. In fact, it's very good. Like,
it's 21 wounds, isn't it?
It's actually 21 wounds because the leader gets an extra wound. And then they have a 4+ save, which is, decent. They don't get a DPR like some Nurgle units do, but there are ways of giving it to them. And they get +1 to run and charge, which obviously if they're running and charging because of Gnarlmaws. So And then if you use a command point to make them run 6, then they're running 7. Kind of makes sense because it's Nurgle. And then in Fast Watch to Charge as well, they will get places.
Yeah, they do. They get everywhere you want to be.
So talk to me about why these guys are so killy. Is it because of their unmodified hit rolls of 6 become D6 hits, or is it because of other buffs that you typically put onto them? Like there's a spell to give them mortal wounds on a 6.
I think they're plenty killy just on their war scroll.
Mm-hmm.
And then the battalion that everybody takes, the Blight Cyst, gives them all rend. And in addition to that, they also ignore enemy cover, which is important for a KO player to know, right? Because your units inside ships are getting +1 to save, but that +1 to save is cover.
Yes.
And Blight Kings in a Blight Cyst are going to be ignoring that cover. So they're effectively rend 2 against the guys inside your ships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're fairly killy anyway, because 3 attacks each, 3s and 3s is not bad. And then when you give them rend, you give them buffs, then they get even killier.
The allegiance ability to give them to give the army wide +1 to wound is amazing. So now they're 3s and 2s, no rend 1 damage, and then as you said, an unmodified 6 to hit becomes D6 hits. And so just think about that, KO players. If you have 5 of these guys with each 3 attacks, that's 15 attacks. That's probably 2 6s, maybe 3. And those 3 attacks have the potential to become 18 more. Okay, you could very well be doing more damage than you actually had the number of attacks on single damage attacks. You know,
this got errated because it used to be you could modify that.
Yeah,
but actually, in some ways, it being unmodified is potentially
way better.
Way
because,
better.
for instance, if you've got a group of Thunderers, -2 to hit because you've got Chemist and the Thunderer's ability. And you think, oh, yeah, well, they're -2 to hit in combat. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to roll some unmodified 6s, which are going to be explode into D6 hits. And before you know it, they're actually getting a lot of attacks through still.
And there's a couple of different ways to give them reroll 1s to hit as well. So you can be fishing for more 6s.
Yeah. And then they can also heal. Just... So
and do splash mortal wounds, just being in combat with them.
Yeah. That's only on a 6+, but it's something to be aware of, I guess, because it's for each unit within 3 inches. So, of course, if they charge a ship, you're rolling a dice for each of your ship and each of the models inside. I guess the impression we're getting is you don't want a ship with stuff inside it getting anywhere near anything Nurgle, really, because...
Yeah.
Something to point. The virulent discharge is any units with this ability. So 1 ironclad wouldn't get 2 rolls from 2 separate units.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Just wanted to. So if you're surrounded by 3 units of 5 Blightkings, you're still only getting hit by 1 virulent. You're not rolling 3d6 for the virulent discharge. Yeah. Just want to point that out.
So you need to know. Because there are similar abilities that do this same sort of thing, but have different names. So if it's a different ability, then you will. Right. But yeah, so you need to, like, if you, I mean, obviously most opponents are going to be playing it correctly anyway. But if they're saying, well, you need to roll a dice for each unit in the ship for this, and then another one for this unit, and another one for this unit, well, hang on, are they all virulent discharge?
Right. But mainly the main thing here for KO players with Blightkings is, yes, they do damage. They can do a lot of damage. They can put out a surprising amount of damage from single wound attacks with no rend, or maybe with rend 1. But their thing is how goddamn durable they are. And that durability comes from a variety of different sources. Lots of wounds per point. I believe they are if not the #1 point efficient per wound in the game, they're right up there for 21 wounds for 140 points. And then because they have access to DPR saves, like you said, because they have potential access to minus to shooting, which we'll see, and then they can heal from a variety of sources. You're going to find that they are durable and resilient, but from a number of different ways. So if you have something that, say you don't have, KO players would hate to have minus to hit, but they're also durable because there's lots of wounds and they heal. So no matter what the opponent is, there's always a reason why they're good against it and soaking damage.
Yeah. And I think the important thing to remember too is that this is like people are spamming these right now. Like the lists that you're going to see aren't like a couple of units of 5 Blight Kings. You're looking at like 45 Blight Kings in a list. Like, you're looking at lists that are like upwards of 200 wounds. Like that is, I think, one of the big hills to climb for KO is just the sheer amount of meat Nurgle's putting on the table.
Yeah,
they do get a horde discount, like you alluded to, Paul. 500 points for 81 wounds. 500 points for 81 wounds is just stunningly efficient.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, I think one of the KO lists we looked at last week was something like 80-something wounds or 90-something wounds for a whole list. I mean, admittedly, it had like 2 battalions in it, but still. And then you're talking about like, well, 1 unit could have almost that for a quarter of the army's points.
Yeah.
The last Nova that I went to, the last Nova Open I went to, my Nurgle list had 199 wounds, and that really bothered me until I decided to name my list. I got 199 wounds, but Tzeentch ain't one.
Okay. I don't know what else to say to that. Okay. So let's move on because there's so many slides left. Right. So we talked about the big guy, ignoring the Glotkin because you probably won't see him. We talked about the units. Let's talk about some of the smaller support units. Harbinger of Decay, 7 wounds, 4+ save, 4+ damage prevention roll. So he's hard to kill.
It's only against magic. It's a 4+ save against magic.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay. I must have misread that then. So the 4+ DPR, he's not getting that on anything else, only on magic.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, I feel better about him now. I feel like that's fine because I can shoot.
Look at this guy. He's on a round base, but he's still going to Kislev. So, I mean, poor him.
Yeah.
He's a bit confused.
Yeah. It's 3. I don't know what unit of measurement they use. Is it 3 inches to Kislev or 3 miles? I don't know. Once per battle at the start of the combat phase, he can roll a dice. On a 2+, an enemy hero suffers D3 mortal wounds, or on a 4+, D3 mortal wounds for the hero and 1 mortal wound for each enemy unit within 7 inches. So, I mean, he's got to get in combat with you first. But if you get the 4+ on that and he targets a hero inside a ship, then everything else in range, which is the ship and all of its models inside, could get an extra mortal as well, which will be on top of, potentially the other mortal wounds you could be getting elsewhere. We mentioned some already. But the big reason he gets taken is the command ability, is that correct? And the battalion, because he's in a battalion, which is good. Yep. So the command ability is a 7-inch aura, which is only within, not only within, for 5+ DPR for wounds and mortal wounds for friendly Nurgle mortal units until the next hero phase. And that was errata to say it doesn't stack, but obviously with the latest GHP that doesn't matter because DPR saves don't stack anyway. So he can give Blightkings a 5+ DPR.
Yes.
So 81 wounds or 21 wounds if it's a 5-man unit wasn't bad enough, but now they got a 5+ damage.
And I assume it's again just one guy needs to be a toe within a 7-inch.
Yes, it's within. It's within, not wholly within. And
and I know we're not talking about it, but he can give 20 Chaos Warriors 5-up DPR. He can give 40 Chaos Marauders DPR. Anything that has the Mortal and Nurgle keyword. He gives Archeon. I think Archeon already has a 5-up anyway, but so like anything that's Mortal and Nurgle will have a 5-up DPR. But most importantly for this,
Archeon has a DPR against mortals.
Oh, okay.
So right, so this would be better for Archeon because it's mortals.
Well,
it's wounds and mortal wounds.
Yeah. He could choose what kind of attack if he wants to use this or if he wants to use his own 4+.
Yeah, he can use this on. Yeah,
this on normal ones and his 4+ on mortals.
Yeah, this is a legacy war scroll, as you pointed out, Lee. It's Nurgle Mortal, which you're not likely to see going forward. It's Within, which you're not likely to see going forward. It's
Yeah, I mean, I think if we got a new book, this would very quickly change to maybe wholly within 14, and that Nurgle Mortal would probably turn into Rawbringers.
But so, are you stringing units back into range of him, or is he just following up and sitting behind them anyway? Behind
he
one or
moves
two units,
7, so he's gonna just hustle up behind your guys anyway.
Yeah. What I'm trying to work out is whether you see like a string of models away from him, to then a bulk of a unit a bit further away. I'm just gonna quickly add Kron to the stream live from.
Hey,
Oh, well, hang on. There we go. That's what I was trying to do.
To just drop in and interrupt. Coming to live from Vic GT.
Speak to us.
Oh, so that's what it looks like to actually play Warhammer.
Yeah, that's what it's like when you actually play a game. So, how long have you got until your next round or the first round for the day, Kron?
Oh, sorry, I can't hear it. I can't really hear it. Well, how are you going though? I'm on 3 wins. I'm about to play Lumineth. I got a win, a loss, and a draw. So beat Ideneth, lost to Lumineth, and had a draw against a whole lot of Grots, like 100+ Grots. So, happy with that. So,
so
it's working. Yeah, he's doing some heavy lifting. Yeah.
So who you put? Kron, you got Lumineth next. Who have you got next, Dave?
Oh, sorry, I can't hear.
No, neither of you can hear us.
Well,
good luck to you both. See you guys. Okay. What I'm doing now then?
Hello.
That's what I want.
Hi, Lee.
There we go. That's what I need to do. Yeah, unfortunately, technical difficulties there. They couldn't actually hear us, but I assume that was Dave
Cunnings.
Yeah. Cunnings.
So Lee, I'm gonna answer the question before Kron so rudely interrupted our stream. I'm just kidding. All the best of luck to him and all the other KO players out there. You will probably see people stringing units back to him, especially to take advantage of Lookout Sir. So not only to get the 5-up DPR, but also to get the Lookout Sir. And what's interesting to note about the Harbinger of Decay as well, just like the Lord of Afflictions, he's a mortal Nurgle. He's a mortal man. He's not a demon, but his slightly diseased horse gives him the demon keyword.
So can he have both the mortal and the demon keyword then?
Yes, which is important because he has access to what I think is probably the best artifact in the entire game that's not named Spell in a Bottle.
Wither Staff?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that artifact in a minute. Basically, he's taken to give that aura of DPR there, isn't he? For the most part. He's
a very command point hungry hero. There's almost not a turn that goes by that you're not using the command point you just generated. So the only excess command points you have are either the one from the battalion or the one that you bought, because almost every turn he's using his command ability. And if you can get the jump on him, if you can take first turn and you can shoot him off the board, none of the Blight Kings, none of the mortals are going to have that 5-up DPR, because you'll see with a lot of Nurgle buffs, they have to be, except for the Plaguebearers, it has to be activated to be able to be useful.
Right.
So maybe we're jumping ahead, but I'm hearing it's a good thing to take first turn
against Nurgle. So from a KO perspective,
of course, I'm not playing Nurgle. Jesus.
I play no, but I mean, Paul might have a different idea, but the list that I traditionally play as a Nurgle player, I want to go first because I want to turn on my defensive buffs. I want to run forward as fast as possible, and I don't care if I get double turned because I don't care how much damage you do. I don't care how concentrated or where you put that damage. I'm going to bet that you can't kill me. So go ahead and double turn me. I need to get my defensive buffs up.
Right. Yeah. So Nurgle is not that afraid of shooting. And that I think that's one of the keys. I think overall, Nurgle is a rough matchup for KO, because it has buffs specifically against shooting and is in general just a lot of wounds on the board that are hard to get rid of. So even if you concentrate fire into something, you also have Bravery 9 or Bravery 10 on all of your models. So everything is just really hard for KO to shift.
Yeah.
I agree.
So the only question from a KO player's perspective other than that then is whether we want to be double turned by Nurgle. I mean, because that's part of the issue is if you take first turn, it's not so much that you don't get the double turn yourself, but you do get double turned in reverse.
They don't have much shooting themselves, I think.
Well,
apart from some heads they can throw at us.
They can throw heads at you, but they're not that bad, I don't think. So they're squishy heads they can throw. Softballs.
So if I can screen my Ironclad, maybe I'm okay with a double.
I hate. So just I'm not trying to jump ahead either, but I think something that KO tries to do, which is play. Although which is so odd because I look at KO and I think they have to a lot of times play the long game. They do have shooting, but we do have shooting, but you can't. I think opponents of KO get so demoralized so quickly and then concede. And I can understand that. But if they have a hard time playing the objective game naturally. That's what Nurgle does really well. So Nurgle loves playing the long game. And I think KO in a lot of games has to try to play that long game. You have to try to pick your army apart and then catch up on objectives. Whereas Nurgle is great. The longer the game goes on, the better Nurgle gets.
The other thing is we're getting the impression already of what the army is like, which is lots of wounds, hard to kill, and also then on top of that you have summoning, which though it's not busted summoning, it's like we're taking a long time just to kill stuff, and then you add more stuff to it.
More stuff that's resistant to shooting.
Yeah. So it just feels like the objective game is actually relatively hard for KO. The only plus side to it is our movement and the way that we move and the tag and go rule set for the game means that because you get run and charge for Nurgle, but if we take an objective and then leave it because we fly high and we don't have any models on it, you can't charge because there's nothing there. So it actually removes some of your movement if we actually just leave objectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we can still summon onto it, and that can be a problem for you.
Yeah, but if you summon onto it and we've got one model, we leave a hero on it, or we leave not a small unit, then it doesn't. You summon 5 models onto it, then you're going to outnumber the hero or something, or gun hauler. So let's move on a bit. To one of the other support heroes, the Lord of Blights. So he's also 7 wounds. That's a common theme because 7 Nurgle, yada yada. He gives a shooting attack, which we just mentioned briefly, to Blightkings. They have to be within 3 inches of him, and they get to throw heads at you, which is a 14-inch range, 1 attack each, 4+3+, no rend, 1 damage. So it's It's not scary.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know. Yeah,
his head is Ren 3 D3, so it's a pretty punchy head that he can hurl. So
it has a helmet on, the one he hurls.
Yeah. He throws one with a helmet on, and he gives the Blightkings like half rotted ones.
Right. The reason why you're going to see him is, one, because he's required to play the Blight Cyst, and B, his command ability is the same thing as the Plaguebearers. It's -1 to shoot, or -2 to shoot, and -1 to melee attacks based on the number of models in the unit, and that does stack with the Plaguebearers ability. So a unit of 30 Plaguebearers could potentially be -4 to shoot.
Yeah, -4 to shoot and -2 to hit in melee. Or he could make Blightkings -1 or -2 to hit, depending on how many's in the unit.
Yep.
In shooting.
And that
from
unit
21 inches away.
is getting to be more and more popular.
And that's within 21 inches. Like, it's a big aura, but it's not wholly within.
Who wrote this book?
Jazz. I don't know. So
Gary knows.
Gary knows who wrote this book. Yeah. So you take him for his command ability. So that's 2 heroes now that want to use their command ability against KO, because both of those are good against KO.
I'm getting some really strong feedback. Does anybody else hear that?
Same here. Yeah. It's not me.
I can't hear it. Is it me?
It's a cloud of flies.
You are the feedback.
I can't hear it, so can you guys?
No, it's gone.
It's gone. It's gone.
Oh,
it was
okay.
like probably a phone or something.
Okay.
Let's move
my
on.
phone was on my desk near my microphone, so it could have been that. I moved it away. So so command point hungry is one weakness I'm seeing here from a Nurgle army perspective. So you want to be using both these command abilities each turn.
So do you often buy an extra command point in your list?
Fairly
if I
often.
have the points, yeah. But you are getting a bonus one for taking the Blight Cyst Battalion if you do. The competitive Nurgle lists are taking a battalion. Whether it's one of 2, you're taking a battalion for sure.
Yeah. If you had to choose as a Nurgle player, you got 1 command point. Do you use his or do you use the Harbinger? Would it be
Who's
the
my
Harbinger?
opponent? Who's my opponent?
Against
KO?
KO. Yeah.
Okay, who am I targeting?
What do you mean? Like, what units do you have?
What unit am I targeting with the command ability? Am I hitting a unit of 10 Blightkings, or is it a unit of 5 Plaguebearers? Making a unit of 5 Plaguebearers that are on a crucial objective -2 to shoot. Or if it's, all right, say it's a unit of 5 Blightkings, right? You make a unit of 5 Blightkings -1 to shoot, or a 5 of DPR. Like, that's a really tough call, honestly. Like, that's something that you'd have to make. What's shooting me at that point? Would it be better for them to be -1 to hit, or would I rather have a DPR save?
Yeah.
The other thing is how many units you have in range of the Harbinger.
Totally.
That's popping multiple units, whereas the Lord of Blights is only 1 unit.
Totally.
So it's some tough choices, having a choice is good though.
That's one of the strengths here, is that you have multiple command abilities that are worth using. So even if you get that one key hero blown up, there's a backup somewhere.
So we've talked about a lot of units and heroes now. You've mentioned in passing the Blight Cyst Battalion. So just very quickly for the people that can't see the screen, because this goes out on a podcast at some point, the battalion is 1 Lord of Blights, 3 to 6 units of Putrid Blightkings. We said how good they were. 0 to 1 Sorcerer and 0 to 1 Harbinger of Decay. So now you have an idea of why we told you about him and those 2 heroes and the Blightkings. We didn't mention the Sorcerer though. So, my impression is he's just a wizard.
Is that the little guy with like the scrolls in the hand? age-old model. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Still metal.
His native spell is within 7 inches. It can do 3 mortal wounds. Okay, but it's within 7 inches, so it's a short-range vomit attack. And he does have access to a few really good spells, namely Blades of Putrefaction, which give a unit on a 6 to hit a mortal wound. Ironically, it's a legacy spell because it's not only 6+ to hit, but it's friendly unit, not Nurgle unit, not friendly Nurgle unit. Friendly unit. So if you're playing a team tournament and you put this on 30 witch elves or arrow boys in the bone splitters, it can get nasty. But so he's got some nasty spells he can use, but he's a 5 wound mortal sorcerer with no DPR save, so he's just a wizard.
So if a KO player comes up against a Blight Cyst list and the sorcerer is there, is it fair to say the sorcerer is there either to save drops or shave some points compared to taking a different wizard? Probably.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I'd say so.
Okay,
it's another one of those things that I'm perfectly happy if you start shooting that.
Okay. Agent Nagash is in the chat. He's saying he's about to leave. So thanks for watching, Agent Nagash. He does a cool YouTube channel as well, so go check that out, but after the show. So the Blight Cyst Battalion abilities, because normally if you take a battalion, it's because you want the cool abilities from it, or drops. So the first ability is Endless Bounty. Basically says that when the Lord of Blights gives heads out for Blightkings to throw, he can give it to all of the units in the battalion that are within 3 inches, not just one unit. But it's, I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Said the shooting attack is not great. So, supremely blighted weapons is something you mentioned earlier. So basically, it gives Putrid Blightkings blighted weapons -1 rend. So makes them a bit more killy. And then blights on the landscape. In the combat phase, enemy units do not receive benefits for being in cover against attacks made by this battalion, which is something, Paul, you mentioned earlier. So Blightkings in this battalion, targeting models inside your ship, they don't get cover and they've got -1 rend, so it's almost like they've got -2 rend.
Yeah.
Or them basically not being in the boat, but you're still getting your -1 to hit, so a little bit. You're not losing out on everything, but
also if we're talking so many Blightkings, like 50, 60, that first Endless Bounty ability is not bad. It's a lot of skulls.
It's only within 3 inches of your Lord of Blights, though, so it tends to not really be a thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can see why people take this battalion, because 3 abilities, 2 of which are very good. One which, corner case, or if you happen to have lots of models in range of the hero, it's weight of dice at the very least. And you get 3 to 6 units that can be battle line. Or are they just basic battle line?
Yep.
Yes.
Basic battle line. One hero you have to take, but he's a good hero because he gives a good buff. And then a couple of optional heroes, one of which is, has a very good ability, and then another one which is a wizard, which, you might want to take a better wizard, but it's a good battalion. So I can see why people are taking that. Is there anything?
And it's very easy with this. Like it's kind of checking all the boxes for you if you're running a Blight King heavy list. So you could very easily just run a 1-drop Nurgle and be totally happy with it, and not sacrifice anything.
How many points is this battalion?
140.
There's a lot of 140s in Nurgle. There's a lot of things in Nurgle a 7.
So I've been playing Nurgle for a very long time, and I remember when this battalion was 220 points when the book came out.
Yep.
So when the book came out, there was a lot of people, oh my God, Blightkings get rend? That's amazing. That's all they saw. And everybody took it. I was very anti-Blight Cyst Battalion. In fact, I never ran it in any of my competitive lists because I looked at it and said, okay, there's 220 points for the battalion and 140 points for the Lord of Blights. It's 360 points to get Blight King's Rend, and at that time, Grimghast Reaper spam was the hot shit, and so I was not going to spend 360 points for my army, for my main ability to be negated by either Seraphon or Grimghast Reapers or anything that ignores Rend once. So I wasn't too hot on Blight Cyst, but nowadays it is very good because unless you run up against Night Haunt, which, they're
not exactly tearing up the meta, are they? But
exactly. So
it's just the drops that you reduce.
I never really cared
about
what
abilities. It's a command point and drops.
You get a command point. So that basically says it's 90 points. 140 point battalion, you get 50 point command point. And because you can only buy one command point, but we've already seen your command hungry to want to spend these command points.
Yes, very much.
You can't buy.
But something important to note here too is that in this army, typically the Lord of Blights is not really that good. It is good, particularly against KO. So you're taking something like a hero that's ordinarily basically 140 point tax, and against KO, it's actually useful. So they're almost running like 140 points up on you.
Right. The thing, the current meta at the moment is quite heavy on shooting, but a year ago, you would very much consider him attacks, and a year from now, he would be more of attacks than he is now, and there are some things in the meta where they're shooting like sentinels. It doesn't really matter if they're negative to hit. First of all, you won't be in range. No, it doesn't matter. The range thing doesn't matter because he buffs a unit rather than debuffs an enemy unit. So I nearly went on the wrong track there, but they're just trying to look for 5s and 6s. So it doesn't matter if you're them negative to hit for someone like Sentinels. So
right, exactly.
It's KO, it's an amazing ability. And there's quite a bit of KO in the meta at the moment. Shootcast.
Whose fault is that?
Well, there's a lot of KO in the meta. It's almost like there's a show encouraging people to play KO. But a 1-drop army with 3 heroes and 6 units
for 140 points.
That's worth taking almost on its own. So
it used to, but like I said before, it used to be 220 points, which I thought was maybe a bit overcosted, but still fair for what it does. 140 points, in my opinion. Not trying to be rude. It's just silly. It's just silly.
I'm surprised on the initial release it wasn't 210, just to be a multiple of 7.
Oh,
it was before there were nominations of 10. It's how old this book is.
Yeah, it is. This is the oldest legal battle tome in the game right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to a sub-faction, which is because we talked about, first of all, allegiance abilities that everything gets, every Nurgle army. Talked about some common units, and because we just talked about a battalion, we're now going to talk about one sub-faction that is typically used with that battalion, and then later we'll then move on to a different battalion and then a different sub-faction. So we can talk about all these things together. So the Blessed Sons comes from Wrath of the Everchosen, but you can take it without breaking Nurgle allegiance. You don't have to be some sort of weird Wrath of the Everchosen allegiance. You still know.
It specifically says that at the top of the Wrath of the Everchosen rules.
So you get a few different things. First of all, it makes you. It gives you an ability. First of all, which is roll a dice each time a friendly Blessed Sons Rockbringer model is slain in the combat phase, and on a 2+, the attacking unit suffers a mortal wound. If the attacking unit has the Nurgle keyword, heal 1 wound allocated from the set. So don't worry about that if you're KO. But what has the rock? Do Blight Kings have the Rockbringer keyword?
Yes. Harbinger of Decay, Lord of Blights, the Sorcerer. Basically, mortal Nurgle units that are not Slaves to Darkness units are Rotbringers.
The saving grace here is it's combat phase.
And models.
Right, so roll a dice each time a friendly. I'm not sure what your point is. Oh, yeah, because the
model is slain. So it's every time a model is slain. So yeah, your people are taking lots of Blightkings, but it's not as if you're going to be, rolling 20 dice a turn and 2 up taking a mortal wound. It's more of a slow attrition chip damage sort of thing.
Yeah.
This is not the reason why you take this sub-faction.
No. For most KO players as well.
It's not different. No.
No, it's because we're going to be trying to shoot you. Max, you're currently building Sky Wardens to planes on, so I imagine you wouldn't like this too much, but I mean, it's going to be likely 1 or 2 mortal wounds at most, because actually killing Blightkings is not that easy anyway. You're not going to kill 10 in a turn.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So
KO's definitely on in the combat phase.
Well, I'll just ram them with my boat in the charge phase, so
yes, kill them. Yeah, kill them in the charge phase. But your bombs, your bombs could trigger. You
could.
Yeah, you shoot a Blight King down, and it's got 1 wound left, and then you charge in.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm listening to understand how to actually play against this army. Because so far I only heard bad things.
Okay.
In general, it's a bad matchup for KO. So don't get down. Like I'm talking to all the other KO players out there. Don't get down when you see your matchup against Nurgle. Just get smart and know what to target.
Yeah. So I mean, we're given some indication there anyway. So don't target the Great Unclean One. You might want to look at trying to kill like the Harbinger of Decay or the Lord of Blights. And then, well, when it comes to choosing between units, you're probably only likely to see 1 anyway. So the command trait you have to take. So you won't be able to, manipulate the wheel with Blessed Suns, and that's called Foul Conqueror. Once per turn, you can use at the double command ability, which is the one that lets you automatically run 6 from the core rules. On a Blessed Suns Rockbringer unit within 12 inches of this general without spending any command points.
So good. Just so good.
So you can run and charge if you're within range of a tree, or you run into range of a tree, so you don't have to start in range of a tree. And then you get to run 6 without using a command point, which is really good because you want to spend your command points on other stuff.
And you get +1 to your run rolls naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, the Blight Kings will get +1 anyway. And then you get a command ability as well, which is at the start of the combat phase. You pick 1 Blessed Suns Rockbringer wholly within 14 inches of a Blessed Suns Rockbringer hero with this command ability. Then at the end of that phase, pick 1 enemy unit that suffered any wounds or mortal wounds inflicted by that unit in that phase. And then if the combined number of wounds or mortal wounds that they suffered is greater than the bravery characteristic, they suffer an extra 3 mortal wounds. So basically, they put this command ability on a unit of Blight Kings, they charge a ship, and if they do in total more damage than the bravery characteristic, you take an extra 3 more wounds.
Yes.
Do you use that much, or
I have literally never used this.
Right, okay.
I think it can be good, but typically the stuff that has low bravery that is going to guarantee triggering it, 3 additional, like a horde of grots or something, or a cloud of Arcanauts, having an additional 3 die is typically not worth a command point, especially when you have to spend the command point before you know it's going to actually go off. If a Nurgle player could use this after damage is done, say, pick a Blight King unit and they do 3 additional mortal wounds if the damage they did is great. If you could be certain it would go off, it would be a lot better, I think. But Lee, as you said, the army is command point heavy as it is. So spending a command point for something that might not even happen is not smart.
The other thing is you have to pick one of your units and then it's damage that unit does, as opposed to just pick an enemy unit and if they suffer more wounds.
Yes.
You have to do all your damage with 1 unit, as opposed to you can't just say pick the chemist and then if it takes enough wounds from like the Gnarlmaw plus a spell plus something else, then all of a sudden it takes an extra 3. It's all got to be done by one particular unit. And it's in combat as well, so it's you can't add on spells and stuff. So yeah, not likely to use that. And then the artifact is Blot Shell Bile Plate. You have to take it. There's no way of getting around it. And it's reroll save rolls of attacks that target the bearer. So that's actually pretty good. For attacks artifact, you can't get it's a good one.
Yes. And note that it says Blessed Sun's hero, not a Rotbringer hero. So your Great Unclean One that is part of a Blessed Sun's army is not you can put this on a Great Unclean One, even though he's not typically a mortal that you would see getting hit by taking advantage of mortal buffs.
Same thing with All Conqueror as well. Like you can have your Great Unclean One be your general and have that command trait.
Yeah. And that's the reason why you take this Blessed Suns, because you have a big unit of Blightkings or several units of Blightkings, and you want to rocket one up the board automatically. They're moving. All right. So, and you're like, okay, it might not be automatically obvious, but your Blightkings are moving 4 inches. And then if they're near the Great Unclean One bell, that's plus 3 inches. And then if the Cycle of Corruption is on stage 1, that's plus 2 inches of movement. And then all of a sudden they're running 6 inches guaranteed, but they get plus 1 to their run rolls because of the musician. Perhaps you have cogs. Perhaps you don't. That's still 16 inches of movement. And then if you run towards a tree, you can then charge, and they get plus 1 to their charge rolls because of their musician. So all of these little sources of movement add up to being just this insanely large, hard to kill unit that might do some damage to you, but really it's just about here's maybe 40, maybe 80 wounds at a 4-up save, maybe have a DPR, maybe they're -1 to hit in melee, and just they're right in your face. Good luck, have fun.
So one thing that's just occurred to me before we're going to move on to a list example in a second, but one thing that's occurred to me is this battalion is likely to be low drops. So we might not get the choice of who goes first. You probably want to go first as a Nurgle player because you just want to run forwards and get on objectives and have 200 wounds that KO are going to struggle to go through. You're going to put that feculent Gnarlmaw down probably in the middle of the table. One thing a KO player can do is make sure that you don't deploy near the Gnarlmaw. And it's very difficult to actually, because they only have to be within 7 inches of the Gnarlmaw, and that's only within, so only one model has to be within. But, if you can make sure that you're deployed 12, 7, plus 20, plus charge range. Yeah, if you can make sure that you're like 18 inches or something from the Gnarlmaw, then the chances are that if they run forwards, unless they get those 3 points from their D3 to summon a different Gnarlmaw, then the normal KO trick of deploying in a corner is probably quite safe turn 1.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like they're fast, but they're not that fast. And it's sometimes from a KO player's perspective on a battle, depending on the battle plan, rather than being in the corner, you want to be in the middle and have like a semicircle around you. But against Nurgle, if their tree is in the middle, and then that means your screen is on the line, or the front part of the circle is, that means that by the time they run and stuff, they will be in charge range and in range of the Gnarlmaw. So on those ones where you would normally want to go in the middle, go for the corner.
Here's the thing, though. So not only does Nurgle want to go first because they want to get those defensive buffs up, if you can outdrop them, you can, and you do a spell in a bottle. The KO players have an incredible ace up their sleeves. Warp Lightning Vortex will quite literally take 7 inches of movement away for a unit, for an army that is taking advantage of the Foul Conqueror trait. So sure, the damage is nice. They're likely to heal some of it back. You might kill a Blighting, which I think would be helpful. But really stop being Warp Lightning Vortex, stopping running just flat out, you're taking 7 inches of moving away. And if you're a Mornar player, which I hear the most handsome, smartest KO players are Mornar players, they you can actually shut down half of their charge as well. So so you can, if you do have that combination, you can really stop the Nurgle train right in its tracks.
Yeah, the Warp Lightning Vortex stopping running is huge in this matchup.
Yes, absolutely.
Does Nurgle have any ways of teleporting or deep striking?
Yes,
deep striking is teleport now.
We'll get to deep striking in a minute. There is one, but there's no teleporting, luckily. So let's look at an example. Oh no, we haven't. Before the example list, there's some other thing. There's another one. How many slides did I put? 21.
We can run through this one pretty quickly.
Yeah, it must be 21.
Yes. So notable spells and artifacts for Blight Cyst, Sass, Blessed Suns lists. Blades of Putrefaction. So it's a spell. Cast on a 7. You pick a friendly unit within 14 inches until your next hero phase. Hit rolls of 6+, which is modifiable. Do a mortal wound in addition to normal damage. So yeah. You can put that on your Blightkings, and they're going to do more wounds. There is an FAQ to clarify that if they get the 6 from their War Scroll ability, doesn't make it D6 mortal wounds. It's only 1 mortal wound, but then it's in addition, so then they still get the D6 extra attacks. You still roll the wounds and save rolls for all those other attacks as well.
Yes.
The 6s suddenly become very important if you've got that spell. The other spell on here we've got is Favored Poxes. Cast on a 7, because Nurgle 7. Enemy unit within 14 inches, because 14 is a multiple of 7, Nurgle. Subtract 1 from hit, wound, and save rolls for that unit until the caster moves or attempts another spell or is slain. So if you cast that on an Ironclad, and then it makes it -1 to hit and wound and save. That's huge. And that can potentially last all game.
Yes, you can.
And
even if the Ironclad got tagged with that and then flew all the way to the other side of the board, it would still be -1 to hit, wound, and save as long as that caster doesn't move or attempts to cast another spell. It follows you. The thing is, though, Favored Poxes is it's a relatively short range. It's 14 inches, which isn't terribly long, and it's in the hero phase, so it's you typically can't move into range and then hit something with it. So, Nurgle, the support heroes, the sorcerers, the GUO, they're typically the Great Unclean One. Sorry, they're typically not right up on front. They're not running forward on the front lines. They're hanging back a little bit, being a support hero, maybe sitting on an objective. So this has potential to be great, but I honestly think there's a better demon spell out there that would hurt Kharadron Overlords way more, which is the Glorious Afflictions. Cast on a 5, 21-inch range, half move, run, charge rolls, and that unit cannot fly.
Okay. I think we have that coming up.
Sorry, didn't mean to jump ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, because I don't think we have that in the example list. Would you normally put Glorious Afflictions in a Blight Cyst list?
Well, it can only be on a Demon Wizard, so only if you have a GUO.
Right, okay. Great
Unclean One, sorry.
Yeah. Just trying to work out if I made a problem. I'm just wondering now whether I made a problem with the screen share, or if it is definitely coming up later. And there's.
I'm also the guy who pronounces "fac" as in a word and not FAQ. So.
Yeah.
I speak in acronyms.
One thing about Favored Poxes is if we're talking about a KO player, if they get the opportunity to go first, might want to go first, is. You might want to, if you know a wizard's got Favored Poxes, you might want to think, unless you're going to kill that wizard, you don't necessarily want to put something important within 14 inches with your flying high and that sort of thing. Be aware of that. If there is a Great Unclean One, because we said Great Unclean One is something you probably aren't going to want to target because it's very hard to kill. You don't want to be within 14 inches of him because he's got +1 to cast, and then puts out on your Ironclad. That's not good. So some notable artifacts, the Wither Stave, which I think Max mentioned earlier, but I don't think we said what it did. So it's reroll hit rolls of 6 for enemy units while they're within 12 inches of the bearer. So...
Yep.
Very annoying on Hearthguard Berserkers with poleaxes, which trigger additional mortal wounds on a 6.
Plague Monks, Demonettes, anything that does other Nurgle with Blades of Putrefaction.
Yeah.
So from a KO perspective, it's not too bad.
Drill
Not too
cannons.
bad if you can reroll hits anyway with a gold.
Yes.
Drill cannons, you're going to suffer some, when you get that lucky 6 on the engine riggers.
Drill cannons, you're going to be shooting from more than 12 inches away, most likely.
True.
So that's and we're not fishing for 6s other than drill cannons, really, or potentially 5s if it's a gun.
Typically, where the Witherstaff is really nasty against KO is going to be that, like, when you have -1, maybe -2 to shoot, and then you roll, you need 4s instead of 3s, and then some of your 6s you have to roll, and now it's a 50-50 chance whether you fail, so it kind of cuts some of those hits out of there.
Yeah. One of the things about negative modifiers to hit is a natural roll of 6 always hits. But you're re-rolling that natural roll of 6 to then something that could potentially fail, and then a modified roll of 6 doesn't always hit. A modified roll of 6 can fail if you've got enough negative modifiers. It's only the natural rolls of 6. So if you're -4 to hit and you're within 12 inches or something with a Wither Stave, you're just not doing anything. Paul, you look like you were trying to say something a second ago.
I think what we're... I think sort of building up here is that when you are up against Nurgle, you definitely want to stay out of range of a Great Unclean One. You want to stay out of range of a hero with the Wither Stave. There's certain things that you just want to continually keep your distance from. And I think that one of the big things in general with playing against Nurgle is, like, if you can kind of like keep them away from you, it can be good. Like, their real threat to you as a KO player is getting your Blight Kings into combat and then going after your ships. So if you constantly keep them away, you're going to be avoiding combat and all of these other abilities. But you might have to end up sacrificing some shots to keep at longer range.
Yeah, you'll definitely be sacrificing shots, because if you want to be out of more than 12 inches away from the Wither Staves, then you're losing your 12-inch shooting on an Ironclad is 45 to 50% of your damage, potentially.
That's a really cerebral point, Paul.
Yeah. And then the other problem is, if you want to keep out of charge range, well, we just talked about that they can buff up to like 16-inch move. So you're going to end up in combat. We've got 24-inch range guns, but no, at some point you're going to get charged. You can kite potentially. If you've got a lot of ships, you've got more 24-inch range guns, or you've got a lot of engine riggers for shooting. You can be quite far away, or you can make sure you're away from the Gnarlmaws so that they can't get the run and charge. But at some point, we need to be getting onto objectives.
I know a lot of this seems like it's leading up to doom and gloom for KO, but I think the one thing that KO does have going for it against Nurgle is that our innate ability to be able to put damage wherever we want. We don't have to fight through a wall of 20 Blight Kings to get rid of the defensive buffs. We could just shoot the buffs off. If you have the damage, have a little bit of luck on your side, or you're smart with your gold. You don't have to fight through 81 wounds. You can just shoot over them, and that's the innate strength of high movement with the ability to shoot. Your damage is coming from that. So if you're smart with your targets and you're heady with your decisions, you can negate. You can undercut a lot of the stuff. Nurgle simply is a great matchup against KO, but a smart KO player can undercut a lot of the bonuses.
Yeah. And also, like, if you go after the units that are not in the buff radius, then you're basically saying, you wasted a command point. Like, it doesn't do anything. Like, it makes your target selection important. Like, it's going to be tempting to go, like, if you have like a unit of 20 Blightkings backed up by a Harbinger of Decay, it's going to be really tempting to go after that. But you're probably better off going at like the corners and chipping off like 5 model units of Blightkings to clear objectives, and just basically like taking that 500 point unit of 20 Blightkings and you're saying you're not allowed to do anything with that this game. It's just going to stand on an objective. A quarter of your army does nothing.
That's a really smart point, Paul, because a lot of Nurgle players will take that 20-man unit of Blightkings with a 16-inch move and charge and throw it up in the middle, but then KO could just fly away. And then, a gun hauler and 6 engine riggers, cool, that's a nice objective you have with 5 Blightkings. I'll take it from you. And then, and then you charge me, and then I just fly away again, and you can avoid, you're not forced to attack that unkillable wall of Blightkings like some armies are.
The other thing is, if you go to a corner or the flank and you kill the 5 Blightkings that are there potentially, then the big unit of 20 is like, well, do I stay where I am or do I try and charge that thing that's in the corner? You charge the thing that's on the flank and in the corner. We fly over to the other side, and then they're stuck in the corner. They can move. They've got fast movement, but they could potentially charge out of range of some of the buffs. So they charge out of range of the GUO, so they lose that 3 inches. There's no Gnarlmaw over there, unless they summon one, but then they've got to have another Gnarlmaw or hero nearby to summon one over there, just to get their 20-man unit back into a useful place in the game.
It's the classic Hearthguard Berserker problem. You have your 20 guys, they run into one direction, and now you spend 2 rounds getting them back in action. It's the curse of slow moving units.
So the thing is, they can be quick, but situationally quick in this case. So the last thing we had on here was the Rustfang artifact, which my impression is the Witherstave is more the popular pick. But the interesting thing about the Rustfang is at the start of the combat phase, you pick an enemy unit within 3 inches, and then you subtract 1 from save rolls for that unit until the end of the battle. And it doesn't stack with itself, so you can't pick that unit twice, but it's the end of the battle. And if you can combine that with favored boxes, a unit can be -2 to their save rolls to the end of the battle, potentially.
Blightkings have rend.
Is this something I can put on the flying hero and just send him forward to -1 save someone?
Yes, I believe that did used to be a bit of a play a few years back.
You see, I'm a few years behind.
Well, and then you combine that with we didn't talk about the War Scroll, but I love Festus the Leechlord, and his spell is a 20-inch range spell that's -1 to save for the rest of the battle. So you've got Rending Blightkings with a Rustfang and Curse of the Leper, Festus' spell, and Favored Boxes. If you wanted to, you could start making some basically Blightkings that are just doing mortal wounds.
And the Rustfang isn't once per battle, is it? So it's every combat phase potentially. So even though it can't stack if you're in combat with the same unit, if you're in combat with a ship, then you can put it on the ship, next combat phase, and it's the combat phase, not your combat phase, isn't it?
Yes.
So the Nurgle players' combat phase they put on the ship. The KO players, if they don't fly out, or then they put it on a unit inside the ship, and then then the next phase they put it on a hero inside the ship, and then another hero inside the ship. And before you just know it, like you've got multiple units that aren't benefit from cover because of the Blessed Suns. They're -1 to their save rolls. One of them's potentially got -1 to multiple units of -1 to save. The Nurgle units have got rend, and then potentially another one's been hit by favored boxes, and maybe Festus as well. And KO stuff is not that durable. We can reroll saves, but reroll saves when you're saving on a 6 is it's not great. A couple of questions from the chat before we move on. Aaron F asks, "Are there any screens here?" He's not hearing Screens. We're not really talked about screens. I guess you can use Plaguebearers as screens.
Sure.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
do you
so
need
many
to?
Plaguebearers using as screens. I think that's usually what you're going to see. But most of the time, when you run up against a Nurgle list, like at a tournament right now, you're probably just going to see like a crap load of Blightkings and a couple of heroes.
Blightkings don't need a screen.
No.
I mean, unless a 20 block of Hearthguard slams into a 20 block of Blightkings, that'll be a bad day. But
Well, still, it's a grind.
yeah, I mean, honestly, even then, you're talking about 81 wounds with a 4-up save and a 5-up DPR, potentially -1 to hit. So, I mean, good luck, Hearthguard, but you're not going to kill that many. Blightkings simply don't need a screen. You want people to charge them.
So Aaron was actually talking about KO player screens. So
Whoops.
Arcanauts,
yeah,
Ether Wings.
I mean, you typically have
MSU Engine Riggers.
Deploy in a corner.
a unit of Arcanauts to screen in your. If you're deploying in the corner, then they're not going to get to you anyway. So you don't necessarily need to screen against Nurgle if you're deploying in the corner. If you deploy in the middle, then you'll need to screen. But in some ways, not having the screen would be better because that might actually deny you the charge, potentially.
Yeah.
Depending on the distances and whether you're 24 inches apart or 18 inches apart. Then obviously when you're flying high around, then your riggers are your screens. They're going to die if some Blightkings charge them. But we're 2 hours in, so we need to quickly move on to...
Get to some lists.
Let's look at an example list. So this one has a Great Unclean One, Blessed Sons we talked about, Blight Cyst Battalion. The Great Unclean One has the Bile Blade and Doomsday Bell, which we mentioned. It has the command trait from Blessed Sons. It has the Wither Stave we just talked about, and Favoured Boxes. Then there's the Harbinger of Decay, the Lord of Blights, because you need that for the battalion, with the Blot Shell Bar Plate, which is the one that comes from Blessed Sons, 20 Blightkings, and then 4 units of 5 Blightkings, the battalion, an extra command point, Chronomantic Cogs, and Aether Void Pendulum.
So I think I gave this one to you, Lee, so I don't mind running through it real quick, kind of just like the ethos of the list, which is ironic because there's Paul has a list that's similar, but I feel like it does like a little bit of a different thing. This one is taking 20 Blightkings, stacking any and every single possible buff that I can, taking first turn and running at you. 2 drops, the only second drop being the Great Unclean One. And so the 20 Blightkings are, if I can go first, and if the KO player hasn't outdropped me and put Warp Lightning Vortex on me, which would completely, utterly cripple this list, those 20 Blightkings are going to be 81 wounds, 4-up armor save, 5-up DPR save. The Lord of Blights is going to give them -1 to hit in melee and -2 to shoot until you can kill 1 Blightking, which is going to be very difficult because you're -2 to shoot. And so, yeah, 81 wounds, 4-up save, 5-up DPR save, -2 to shoot, -1 to hit in melee. With cogs, they're going to be 4-inch move, 3 from the GUO, 2 hopefully from the cycle, and then 2 from cogs. So that's going to be, and then an automatic 6 from the Great Unclean One, +1 movement. So they're going to be 18-inch movement and still charging at 2d6 +3. So their minimum, if they roll double ones on their charge, they're minimum going 18, 23 inches. So if both armies deployed on a line and I rolled double ones for my charge, I'd be going 23 inches. This is fast. It's fast. It takes it's kind of similar to my list that we talked about with Tempest Eye, where I take a nearly unkillable unit and throw it at you. I very much love the Alpha Bunker type of playstyle. The Aether Void Pendulum is kind of where I think there's a little bit of the other Blightkings. They stand around on objectives. They zone you out. You fly high out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the list. It's those 20 Blight Kings just get in your face. The Aethervoid Pendulum, you could either leave that off for a Triumph, which would be nice. Aethervoid Pendulum is just a nice way for the GUO to throw out some mortal wounds in a line. And so that's the list.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, so the list we've got are basically just examples, because most of the lists are going to just be an X amount of Blight Kings, the Blight Cyst Battalion, a lot of Blights because you have to have it, probably a Harbinger of Decay, and then it's just like a wizard of some sort, and maybe another hero, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then it's like the seasoning, which is whether you're taking the Wither Stave or Favored Pox or Rustfang, or you're taking Favored Poxes or the other one, Blades of Putrefaction, or however you pronounce that, and then whether you're taking stuff like Cox. So this one is probably the example of how they can get super fast and super defensive in some ways.
Warp Lightning Vortex just shut this list down, though. I mean, if you go first, if you're a single drop or even a 2-drop and you win the dice roll, it shuts this list down, because you can't. You're taking 7 inches of movement off of that.
What if I throw like 6 engine riggers into those 20 Blight Kings, like on an end, tag them, and just let him stand there?
This is something I was wondering about. If you tag a unit of Blight Kings, like they're 40 mil bases, you get 3-inch part in, but got to pile around. A 40-inch base is over 1.5 inches that they got to move around, and you can't move it in a straight line. Are they deployed like base to base, or are they deployed like 1/2 inch apart or 1 inch apart? So they normally sort of tight formation, or?
Yes. No, I mean, it really all depends. But I mean, even 3 Blight Kings against 6 engine riggers. I mean, you're looking at 9 attacks, 6 doing D6 hits that are 3s and 3s, Ren 1. With a low bravery unit like engine riggers, I would not want any KO unit near any Blight Kings in combat.
Okay.
Like Paul said, arm's length, a long arm's length away.
The thing is, it's only useful except for with the 20. It's only really useful if you've got a grapnel to prevent the charge, prevent the retreat. Sorry.
Yeah.
Although with the 20, just making them have to retreat anyway means that they can't charge something else. So maybe you could make a case for Gun Hauler charging the end, because that's 10 wounds.
4+ rerollable.
You would want to hopefully use your Warp Lightning Vortex to shut down the running. You would want to plunk 1 Blight King off of the unit to make them not -2 to shoot at, and then you would also, if possible, want to take out that Harbinger of Decay for sure. What's really great, a lot of the KO players are using Zilfin with the Engine Master and Dirigible Suit, that very standard Zilfin bomb list. Grudge Bearer, the Harbinger of Decay, hitch a ride with a Gun Hauler or something, and then just take them out with 2 damage weapon battery. I actually played against I brought my Nurgle army to my friend's house, and he played this Nurgle, and I played the Zilfin bomb list. And that's the first thing I did. I took out the Harbinger of Decay as soon as I could. I ate the -1 to hit. I used his Aether Gold to reroll all hits. I grudged him, and I got rid of him turn 1 because he had to go.
So one thing about this is most KO lists probably aren't going to outdrop it. So, I mean, it's all very well, and you're not going to give us the turn, are you?
Nope.
No. So, if you do get the opportunity to go first, I think you've got a really good chance, because you also if you know you're going to take first turn, your Arcanauts, which are normally a screen, can be inside your ship. So you can actually just put out a line of Arcanauts in front of those 20 Putrid Blightkings, and then you go, well, you can't fly, so you can't go over the top of them. So instead of getting that, however, what was it, 18-inch move? Plus, well, no, you'll move none, because I'm 3 inches away, and then you've got to charge my Arcanauts. Thank you very much.
And hopefully, if you're Iron Sky Command, you make them Battle Shock immune.
You don't have shooting to remove them, so it's all magic or the wheel damage.
And Arcanauts, if you spread them out, I mean, you've got to be within 6 inches of the ship, but you can get out
20-inch line.
you can get I think it's 19 inches you can get if it's a completely straight line. When the ship's 9 inches away, it's probably a little bit shorter, but that's quite hard for a big unit of 20 Blightkings to move past. Is there a case then that you do that, put the Warp Lightning Vortex on, leave your Endrin Master dirigible suit to try and shoot the Harbinger, and then you fly high everything else to one of the flanks to kill a unit of 5 Blightkings, and then that puts the Nurgle player, when they're potentially going to get a double turn, in this position where I can't move forwards into the table. Do I move over to that flank and then potentially get stuck there? Or do you just sit behind your Arcanauts and then if they get the double turn, they go through them?
What's the battle plan? That's the way that you're going to be able to make those types of decisions. What's the battle plan?
Yeah, because if there's objectives in the middle, like if it's something like focal points, there won't be 5 Putrid Blightkings on a flank anyway, because it's very central. They'll be sort of on a flank, but not really far away. So battle plan dependent.
If it's battle for the pass, those 20 Blightkings are on one flank with the Great Unclean One and maybe the Harbinger. You go after the other objectives and you just stay away from them, but just be careful not to get 20 Blightkings on your home objective. That's a recipe for disaster. But the KO they're so battle plan dependent. They really are.
Yeah. We said that the Great Unclean One is something you shouldn't target, but in this list, he's giving chromatic cogs, and then he's also got things like the Wither Stave and favorite boxes. Does that make him more of a target, or do you think he's still even in this list not watching?
I think by the time that you get to shoot him, he's probably done like 90% of what you really want out of him. Like so much of what you need out of the Great Unclean One, like he does first turn.
Turn 1. Yeah. Yeah, because you're not getting the first turn. So it's only really if you do get to outdrop them that you would even consider it. If it's past turn 1, there's no point.
Yep.
I will say it's because of this list that I started playing Kharadron Overlords, which is ironic because we're doing this show now, because I love Blightkings very much, but this list is sort of, in my opinion, what is wrong with the Nurgle book. It has become so Blight-King-centric that list writing is so roadmappy that it makes it unfun for me in the way that I enjoy playing the army typically. Because if you're in a competitive minded lens, it's Blightkings or bust. And it's all your other choices revolve around making those Blightkings better. So this list is why I started playing Kharadron Overlords.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted something different.
If this list, because this list is likely to go first. So if Nurgle player takes first turn, you put up your buffs, and then you run the 20 Blightkings into the middle of the table because you're not getting the charge.
Yeah. Go ahead. You're -2 to shoot. You're and wherever they go, they're -2 to shoot, and they're with a 5-up DPR.
So where the other 5s are going onto objectives and zoning out space, I assume.
Yes.
Yep.
So then, from the KO player's perspective, I assume we would just put the Warp Lightning Vortex on the Blightkings, or on the try and overlap it onto the heroes as well, I guess. Depending on how far behind they are, but the Harbinger is probably keeping up, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got a 7-inch base move.
Yeah, and then he's getting the buffs aren't like pick one unit. Like Doomsday Bell is all units within range. Cogs is all units. Everything When you use that command trait to auto run 6, it's not limited in how many times you can use that, is that?
No, once per turn.
Oh, it's once per turn. So if he wants to run 6, then you've got to spend a command point to do it.
Yes.
But, he's got a faster move naturally, so he's probably going to keep up. So yeah, you just put your Warp Lightning Vortex over the top of him and the Blightkings. And if they're on an objective, I think I wouldn't try and shoot them because they're -2 to hit. I would then, after I deliver the Warp Lightning Vortex, I would almost definitely go somewhere else to try and kill 5 Blightkings elsewhere that aren't -2 to hit. And then the 20 Blightkings are like, right, I'm on an objective. Do I leave the objective to try and kill the KO stuff? Or do I stay here inside a Warp Lightning Vortex? And if they leave the objective, then you can potentially fly high into it.
The thing is, though, once you start killing something, you have to keep shooting it until it's dead, or it will heal up. So if you start hitting the Harbinger of Decay, if you decide that's your target, if you shoot a couple drills at it and you get some mortal wounds on it, and then you leave him on 2 wounds, he's likely to heal, maybe not to full, but you've just wasted a lot of your damage that you've done when that damage is already hard to do. So if you choose to get rid of the Lord of Blight, focus fire on it. That's where I think the escort wing is great, because you can sort of pick a target and then get reroll once to hit, which is awesome. So yeah, my priority is, if you're going to try to shoot the Blightkings, you got to make sure you take them down 1, or you got to get rid of the Lord of Blights if they're not already tagged with that command ability, or the Harbinger of Decay. Some Nurgle players are going to value the 5 of DPR more than the Lord of Blights, for sure.
But when they're a 20-man unit, then the -2 to hit is worse than the 5 up DPR.
Yes.
Once it goes down to -1 to hit, then the 5 up DPR is worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just depends. I mean, it depends on the battle plan, obviously, as we mentioned. But I'm so tempted when you've got 500 points tied up in one unit plus 2 heroes with them, just to try and ignore them.
100%.
But
that's what I think you do.
And then when you do get around to taking them out, you need to have made sure you took out those heroes first, the Harbinger and the Lord of Blights.
Do you want to check out the other list, Lee, that's similar?
So the next, before we look at the next list, we've got some more splaining to do.
My homie, this is my homeboy. So, I love
MVP.
Him. Yes.
Max, you asked about ambushing and teleporting.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy. He's a pirate, and he has a fictional imaginary boat. So basically,
okay.
He's a rune smiter, Max. Okay?
No,
yes, he is. He's a rune smiter. But he can only do it with Blightkings. So what that means is, if you don't know what a rune smiter does, he can deploy off the board. And when you deploy him off the board, you can put up to 1 unit of... Isn't it capped at 10? Is it capped at a unit of 10?
No.
Who?
No,
Gutrot?
it's not capped.
No.
But so you can put when you deploy him off the board, you can put 1 unit of Putrid Blightkings with him. And unlike the Rune Smiter, that's 1 drop. And then they can then be set up at the end of the first movement phase, their first movement phase, within 6 inches of each other and wholly within 6 inches of the board edge.
And presumably 9 away.
Yes, and 9 inches away. So, yeah, he's your ambushing guy. You take him because you want to ambush the Blightkings. He's got some other things he does. He has this thing at combat phase. He can pick an enemy hero and then choose 1 weapon carried by that model, and then on 4+ they can't use it in the combat phase. But and then he has to target enemy heroes if he's within 3 inches. And they're like, but the reason, if you see this in the list, that's because he's ambushing. That's what KO player needs to know.
I once had Gutrot Spume 1v1 of Vermin Lord Corruptor with the Sword of Judgment, So 10 attacks, each 6 doing a D6 mortal wounds. But Spume took away his Plague Reapers 3 combat phases in a row and just sat there for 3 turns swiping at his ankles and 1v1'd him. And it was the most amazing thing ever. It was so good.
I guess it's worth noting if he gets in combat with your Endrin Master with Dirigible Suit, he can just take away his Aphomatic Saw, which is not insignificant. That's like, you don't get
or
that.
you could, or he can take away the Engine Master in harness's hammer from outside the boat.
Yeah, he just reached through the porthole and
just grabbed it with his tentacle and was like, "You're not using that one."
It's like, because he's probably taller than a dwarf. Let's be honest. So you can just imagine he's like playing keep away, hanging like this hammer, and the Animals is jumping up and down trying to reach it.
I just want to know how he was able to grab like the Slayer of Kings and hold on to it while Archeon just waves him around trying to shake him off. Like a cartoon.
But yeah, there's nothing else about him really that's important. I guess the fact that he has to target heroes is potentially.
Paul's about to drop some knowledge on you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the important thing is that he's a hero going along with a unit of Blightkings that's deep striking. So he's also like a locus for command abilities. So he can make them reroll charges. He can, make them run 6. And he's also then a locus for summoning.
There it is.
Okay. So, and you summon at the end of the movement phase.
Yep.
He goes on at the end of the movement phase, but if they happen at the same time, you get to choose the order. So you can bring him on, and then you can then also put a tree somewhere. Or
no, you generate points in the hero phase. But what Paul is saying is that he ramps up the summoning. Turn 2, you've doubled your summoning pool.
What I was saying was the summoned units come on at the end of the movement phase.
Oh, I see. Yes,
he comes on at the end of the movement phase. So you could think, that he can't summon over there. I mean, it's turn 1 anyway. He has to come on turn 1. So
yes,
unless you roll a 3 with your D3, it doesn't really matter. But he's a location where you can summon some within 12 inches of him as well.
Yes.
So
he speeds up summoning. He like Paul exactly said. He's a point on the battlefield for command abilities, for summoning, for generating summoning points. What he does best is he forces you to make a decision. He takes 10 Blightkings typically. You can take 20. I've seen it done. It happened to me. And he makes you make a decision. Do you go back, double back, or go back and deal with those 10 Blightkings in your backfield, or do you ignore them? One way or the other, you're going to be wrong because there's no right answer to that.
So one thing I said on the previous list was you can deploy in the corner against that list, and you don't actually need your screen outside the boat. You can just keep them in the boat. If he's on the table, you can't do that.
Turns out that was a lie.
If he's in the list, then you do need your screen because then he's going to be bringing on a Blightkings within 9 inches away from you.
Do we have an example? Do we have a list with him?
Yes, we do. Yes,
do we? Oh, really?
Yes. It's like we planned this, Matt. Before we do, let's talk about.
I wouldn't know. I don't know what planning is. Oh, here's another. This model is so fantastic. I don't know what I like more, whether it's Festus force feeding his victim some like acidic potion, or if it's the gleeful Nurgling on top, just like shoveling random body parts into like a casket of melting liquid.
Well, I've never seen this guy.
Really?
From a KO guy's or like a dwarf loving perspective, he almost has like a beard of like just like boils and stuff.
Yeah. His backstory is fantastic. So he was like an apothecary, and Nurgle was so angry at him for healing all the wonderful diseases that he beset upon the world that he corrupted him in sort of an act of conquering. How dare you sort of heal the sick? And so now he comes up with all sorts of vile concoctions, whereas before he was healing them. So it's quite wonderful. But he also those vile concoctions are very pleasant for friendly Nurgle, so he can heal as well as do damage.
Oh, I think he was in the list that won the Prague GT the year before last.
He is money on a Balewind Vortex. Festus and a Balewind. I don't take Festus unless I can afford the Balewind, because his spell is so good on a Balewind Vortex, because it adds 6 inches. It's a 20-inch. I think I misspoke earlier when I said it was a 20-inch range. It's 14-inch range, but on the Balewind it's 20, and it's -1 to save for the rest of the game. And then you can give him Blades of Putrefaction if you want. My personal favorite to give him is Gift of Contagion, which is cast on a 6, and it's a random debuff. It's a D3. On a 1 or a 2, it's -1 to hit. 3 or 4, it's -1 to wound. 5 or 6, it's -1 to save. So potentially he can hit a 1 unit with -2 to save. It's pretty tight.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's basically a wizard, but you take him for more points than a basic wizard because he's got a better spell, basically.
But he doesn't fit in the battalion, so it adds a drop.
Yeah. So you get a better spell, but you add a drop if you take him. He does also have an ability to heal a friendly unit as well, which I think you mentioned earlier. Doesn't have a keyword. So, yeah.
Neither does the Glotkin's native spell to add +1 to the wound characteristic. It's just a friendly unit. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Lots of artifacts from days past are in this book.
Yeah. So, and this is, we said what it was. It's -1 to save. So you can put that on your Ironclad and make it -1 to save. So you free up save. It doesn't make it a 4-up save, but it makes sure it changes your roll. It's like a 4-up save. It's like giving other units. It's like almost like giving every unit that targets that unit extra rend. That's what he does. So here's another example list. So it's also a Blight Cyst list with Blessed Sons. This one's 3 drops, more wounds, 207 wounds, 1970 points. So triumph. And from a KO player's perspective, potentially stopping you getting a triumph. So Harbinger of Decay, he's a general this time. He has Rust Fang as his artifact rather than Witherstave. I think often players would normally take Witherstave, but we put this in as an example because of the synergies. Lord of Blights, he has the Blotshell Bile Plate, which is the reroll saves from the Blessed Sons, Gutrot Spume, Festus the Leechlord with Blades of Putrefaction, and then 20 Blightkings, 10 Blightkings, and then 3 units of 5, the battalion, and an extra command point. So I guess the synergies in this one is the 10 Blightkings can deep strike, which gives you an extra thing to think about, and potentially this list can put out -3 to save. In fact, if this list had the other spell, it could put out -4. But I don't think you'd have enough wizards to do it in the same turn, would you? I think Paul keeps freezing. Yeah, he's definitely lagging.
I'm having internet connection issues.
So basically, this list is similar to the other one, except Spume is likely to take 10 Blightkings, start off the board, drop down somewhere 9 inches away from you, but then roll an 8-inch charge. So because they get natural +1 to their charge. So it makes the likelihood of that charge a higher success. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in your backfield if you zone out. It can just be way up off the side of the board, but you've got a unit of 20 Blightkings going all the way over on the left side, say, or onto one objective. But then you've got Gutrot Spume and 10 Blightkings coming off from the other edge, so it's like a multi-pronged attack. That's what this list does great. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Festus without a Balewind because you want to be able to use both of those spells at the same time, and I don't feel like being I'm not sure that a one spell Festus is all that great. And to be honest with you, the GUO is a great model because you can hide Festus behind him and you can't see him because he completely covers you. And if you have Festus behind the Glotkin kind of has a stance where he's like walking forward, so you can see between his legs. So it's a lot harder. But the GUO completely blocks line of sight. So Festus just running right behind him like a fullback, like handing out potions to him is pretty awesome. Welcome back, Paul. I was just trying to go over stuff. I know this is a list that you had crafted up for us, but I was just trying to carry the day here while you were readjusting. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet connection decided to crap out in an inopportune time. Thankfully, like everything always works better on my phone. I don't understand why, but
of course, right?
Yeah.
Nurgle got your internet connection, obviously.
Yeah, got some Nurgling in the works.
Yeah. So, I think for this list, I might have actually took one that one of you guys suggested and tweaked it a bit just to put in examples of some of the other synergies. I think the thing is between this list and the one before is we've shown some of the different synergies that you can get. So then when you face up against Blight Cyst, you can look at it and go, okay, well, this does this does this, and work out what the issues are going to be. So first of all, my first thing I'd look for is, do they have Gutrot Spume?
Yes.
And that's the same thing I do with any opponent's armies. Like, if I come against Fire Slayers, do they have a Rune Smiter? If I go up against Deep King, do they have the Soul Squire? Do they have anything that means that they're deploying off the table and they're going to then deep strike at me potentially? And then it's like, they're going to have the Lord of Blights. They probably have the Harbinger of Decays. It's like, well, do they have a Sorcerer? Do they have Festus? Or do they have a Great Unclean One? Or do they have a combination? And then what spells do they have? And then what artifacts do they have? Because you know what Blessed Suns does. I mean, that means that, the general is going to allow them to run 6 inches without a command point. They're all getting rend and stuff. So then it's like, are you looking out for things that are going to give you minus to save? Or is it going to be the Wither Stave? And then what spells is it? And to be honest, I think I'd rather see Rustfang than Witherstave as a KO player.
Yeah, absolutely. The Witherstaff is the best artifact in the game. Again, that's not spells other than Spell in the Bottle. Spell in the Bottle is hands down the best artifact in the game. But Witherstaff for a long time was the reigning champion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is just it's so powerful, especially it keeps getting more powerful as they keep printing more books that have these abilities that trigger on set. It's like you're just making Nurgle's artifacts more powerful every time you print a new book.
And it's not models within 12, it's units. So again, you could have a line of 30 demonettes all the way going across the board, but as long as one demonette is within 12-inch range, they're not getting their exploding 6s.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even if you don't have exploding 6s, it's still less attacks going through.
Absolutely.
It's still it's almost similar to having -1 to hit, isn't it?
It's mathematically the same, like the inverse effect as reroll ones to hit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come up against Blight Cyst, the question is, what synergies have they gone for? Are there lots is there lots of movement? Is there minuses to save? Is there minuses to save? And have they got the blades of putrefaction, however you pronounce that, to do the mortal wounds, and then play around those. So Rustfang you can easily play around.
On the surface, it's a buttload of Blightkings, but when you scratch below that, how are they using them? What aspect are they taking advantage of? What flavor of Blightkings is it? Is it fast Blightkings? Is it minus to save Rendy Blightkings? Are they Blightkings that come off the edge? Are they just insanely durable Blightkings, which typically they are? It's kind of an oxymoron, but yeah. So Blight Cyst equals Blightkings, but is it chocolate, vanilla, or strawberry?
Well, and you can get combinations of these two lists. So you took Festus out. you'd have to take out some Blightkings, but you could put in a GUO. You could maybe put in Cogs and have Gutrot Spume, and then that means that the deep striking Blightkings got +3 to charge.
No, they
So
don't
as
it's +3. It's +3 for movement, not charging.
No, for Cogs.
Oh,
Because
right.
they have +1, then they get +2 from Cogs. So not only would you have a unit running across the table really fast, but you'd have a deep striking unit with +3 to charge to think about as well. So you can deploy out of the way of one, but not necessarily the other, because the way you get out of the way of the one really fast, which is probably in the middle of the table and going to go across, is you go in the corners, which means you're then in range of the ones that can come off the table edges.
every single one of my Nurgle lists starts with Gutrot Spume and 10 Blightkings. Every single list. It's kind of a joke in the Nurgle WhatsApp chat that, like, if you want to start conversation and it hasn't been slow for, or it's been slow for a couple of days, just spout out that Gutrot Spume sucks, and I'll just be summoned immediately to the chat because I love that War Scroll so much. It does it. So I made the list before just as sort of to showcase how fast Nurgle can be and what that would, how scary that is, but Gutrot Spume is so good for so many different reasons, and it's not really that overtly obvious. So every single list starts with Spume and 10 Kings for me.
Yeah, I run it very quickly.
From a KO perspective, I'm not going to be targeting him. So he's off the table, so he's something to think about for deployment. But once the game is in motion, you don't have to worry about it. And
Right.
because he has to come on turn 1, unlike a Rune Smiter or a Soul Scryer, where, you know, they could come on turn 2 or 3, it's like, it's got to happen. So therefore, you know, once you get past turn 1, that worry goes away. Which actually, a lot of the time with a deep strike, it's the threat of where they could go is worse than actually coming on. Especially with KO, where you can then just get away from the place anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think we covered Blight Cyst. So let's move on to some of the things one of the other things you might see. Blight Cyst is far more common. That's correct, guys? Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Nowadays, yes.
So we're not going to spend a huge amount of time on this because we're 2.5 hours in already. But Thricefold Befoulment is, you might see, and I think you said it's what, like 80% Blight Cyst, maybe more.
I mean, it's hard to judge, but Blight Cyst, I mean, unfortunately, if you're going to a tournament, there's going to be Nurgle players that are going to be competitive are playing Blight Cyst. And then the other Nurgle players that are there to have fun with 3 GUOs are going to play Thricefold Befoulment. And it's still pretty good. It has some really weird rules interactions that make it quite dangerous for KO, but I think this is going to be a lot easier for KO to handle, to play around, to dance around. I don't think it's certainly not as competitive as Blight Cyst, but it still has some, you will see it because it is popular, whether it's competitive or not. So it's good to be aware of what it does.
I think the game plan for KO is a lot easier against Thricefold Befoulment than it is against a Blight Cyst list. Like, I think against Thricefold, like, the big thing you want to do is probably ignore the Great Unclean Ones and stay out of range of them, and just kill all the stuff that's taking objectives, which is only going to be about 50% of their list. So realistically, you have like half as much to kill as you usually would in points.
Yeah, I guess we haven't got the example list up yet. The trouble is the stuff that isn't the Great Unclean Ones is probably going to be -2 or -1 to hit in shooting.
And, you know, I just thought about this point, Lee. You know, even if they are -1 or -2 to hit, one of the greatest workarounds to hit modifiers are rerolls, which KO has in spades.
Yes.
There are no pluses to hit, but pluses to hit do not counteract minuses to hit very well, because you're much more likely to have a hit debuff than a hit buff typically in a book, and rerolls are much more effective. So if you have a flare pistol and a gold share, I like to take big units of engine riggers. I love taking 12 engine riggers, and recently I've stopped using Spell in a Bottle in my list, and I can't wait to try this more in TTS. But if I have 2 turns of 12 engine riggers with 24 volley gun shots and then 4 drill cannon shots, re-rolling all hits 2 turns in a row, that's pretty powerful, even against -1 or -2 to hit. So
rerolls always really good. So this battalion, it's basically just 3 Great Unclean Ones.
Literally is 3 Great Unclean Ones.
That's keyworded, which means there is actually another option, which means you can have Rotigus, which is like a named Great Unclean One. But before we talk about Rotigus, talk about the abilities. So there's 2. Hungry for the Plague God's Praise. Reroll hit rolls of 1 for models from this battalion while they are within 14 inches of another model from this battalion. In addition, reroll wound rolls of 1 for models from this battalion while they are within 14 inches of 2 other models from the battalion. So you've got 3 Great Unclean Ones. If a Great Unclean One is near 1, they get reroll 1s to hit. If they're near 2, they get reroll 1s to hit and reroll 1s to wound. Are Great Unclean Ones actually that killy? And I think Rotigus is fairly killy, isn't he? But
yeah, Rotigus is okay, and the melee build of the Great Unclean One can be pretty punchy. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's not like super exciting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Exalted Great Unclean One is not something you're likely to see, but, he gets an extra attack on a sword and he hits on 3s. So, 4 attacks hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s with Ren 2 3 damage. It's scary. You're not likely to see it, but it's interesting. And, you could stack a couple of +1 attacks, so you could get him up to 6 attacks at 3s rerolling 1s, 2s to wound Ren 2 3 damage. But I mean,
Ren 2 3 damage, did you say?
Yeah.
3 damage. Yeah. Okay, so I mean that's fairly reliable attacks. 6 attacks is quite a few, and 3 damage is high. So
yeah, but it takes 1,000 points worth of Great Unclean Ones and battalions to make him scary.
Yeah, and then it's not that much damage when you put it in that perspective.
Now he used to be insane. But he used to do 2d6 attacks that had Ren 2 and each did d3 damage.
Okay.
Yeah, but don't worry, that doesn't exist anymore for a reason.
Okay, so the other ability is Plague Storm of Nurgle, and this is probably, I think, why you take the battalion. So if a model from this battalion successfully casts a Plague Wind spell, we briefly mentioned a long time ago, unfortunately, when it's within 7 inches of another model from this battalion, then the number of mortal wounds inflicted by that spell is increased from D3 to 2d3. And if the caster is within 7 inches of 2 other models from this battalion, then the mortal wounds is 3d3. Yes. So run us through, Matt or Paul, whichever one of you wants to do it. Yeah. Again, what Plague Wind normally is.
Paul, do you want to?
So you draw a line from the caster, 14 inches to a point. Everything along that line that is not Nurgle takes D3 mortal wounds. So this potentially is increasing that to 3d3 mortal wounds for everything along that line. So this means, that means a ship and everything inside it. And the really dangerous thing with Thricefold Befoulment is that this goes along with Spell Portal. So you use Spell Portal to basically put that beam anywhere you want to.
Yes, because then the interesting thing about Spell Portal is that the point is chosen from, you measure the range for the point from the Spell Portal. So it's 14 inches, did you say?
Yep.
Yeah, so 14 inches from the Spell Portal. Well, then you draw the line back to the caster.
Yes.
So potentially a very long line of 3d3 mortal wounds. And it doesn't affect Nurgle.
If it is a Nurgle unit, it heals D3.
Right.
Yep.
But the buffs in this only buffs the mortal wounds, doesn't it?
Yes.
Doesn't buff the healing, luckily. So this is typically taken in Munificent Wanderers. So that has an ability called Locus of Corrosion. So while an enemy unit is within 3 inches of any Munificent Wanderers demon units, you worsen the rend characteristic of that unit's melee weapons by 1 to a minimum of 0. And Nurgle units are unaffected. So make sure your riggers are less killy. Basically.
It's basically +1 save to anything with rend.
But not shooting, though. Yep.
No.
So it makes your riggers and your Sky Wardens, if they charge, do less, or your Endra Master of
the other yeah, go ahead. See, Lisa.
I was going to say not too bad for KO.
No. The other reason you take this is for the amazing command trait.
Okay, so the command trait is one last gift. No way of getting around it. Sometimes you can get around command traits, but as Matt said, it's really good, so you wouldn't want to get around it anyway. So it's if the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a melee weapon that targets a friendly Munificent Wanderers demon unit wholly within 12 inches of this general is 6, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all of its attacks have been resolved. So if you shoot anything or do any, basically it's splashback mortal wounds.
Yeah, but melee only, not shooting.
Right, okay, yes, melee. Yes, sorry. Yeah, melee weapons. So again, this is bad for riggers and wardens and your Endra Master of Ritual Suit, because the other thing is because it's melee weapons, but not say in the combat phase.
Right.
So it doesn't affect your bombs.
Right.
But it wouldn't affect bombs anyway because it's hit rolls that it triggers. But
right, but you essentially take this on a big unit of Plaguebearers that are 5 up rerolling 1s to save, and then a 5 up after save, and then you've already splashed back a bunch of mortal wounds, and it's something that you don't take the Wither Stave for because it literally counteracts the Wither Stave counteracts the ability there, but it's essentially putting damage. It's essentially giving damage to Plaguebearers that typically don't do much damage simply by their innate toughness.
Mm-hmm. So, and basically what these two things are telling me is if you come up against Munificent Wanderers list, you don't want to charge your riggers in.
Oh, God, no. They'd be only rend 1, and then any 6, they immediately take a mortal wound.
And you don't want to, you take 1 or 2 mortal wounds and you lose a rigger. Then when your enemy hits back, that's bad.
And 30 Plaguebearers don't do a whole lot of damage, but it's still 30 bodies. The GUOs command ability to give them all +1 attack. So it's not a whole lot of damage, but that's still 15, 20, 30, 40 attacks coming your way. They do wound on 3s, so they hit on 4s, wound on 3s, as opposed to 4s and 4s like basic infantry. So, so they can punch back.
This is really bad for Barrack Zon because
so
the Sky Wardens will go to no rend basically, and because they have more attacks than riggers. So, if it's a unit of 12 with 1 Sky Hook, then
23 attacks.
23 attacks, so 23 chances of taking a mortal wound back. You'll probably take 3 to 4 mortal wounds back on yourself just from charging, and then because you've got no rend on your attacks, you're going to be and you'll be -1 to hit in melee as well.
Yep.
So 4s and 2s, no rend.
Go ahead and use your gold and reroll all hits. Please get me more 6s.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I can re-roll the 6, so doesn't matter.
Yes, because you don't have to just re-roll failed ones. So
you re-roll everything with gold.
True.
So I'll re-roll 6s and fails.
Then the command ability is you can use the command ability in the hero phase. You do so, you pick 1 friendly demon unit wholly within 14 inches of the hero. The hero has to be a demon hero. Until the start of your next hero phase, When an enemy unit ends a charge move within 3 inches of that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds, and a unit can't benefit from this command ability more than once per turn. So you charge your
Shield of Third,
in,
yeah.
And then you take D3 mortal wounds before you do your attacks, and then when you do attack, you it's just this Munificent Wanderers is just defense against melee, basically.
100%. 100%. So it's kind of the opposite of Blight Cyst, where instead of like running at you and doing damage, you want people to run at you and then do no damage, and the damage they do get through is also harming the attacker.
Harming themselves, yeah.
Yes.
And lastly, the artifact is you pick one of the bearers, melee weapons, and you add one to hit rolls.
It's attacks.
For the weapon. Yeah, I mean, +1 to hit is not bad on a really good killy unit, but it's nothing to write home for. And then we've seen that you've got other artifacts that are better.
Right, so absolutely.
So let's move on to some notable spells. And I do have Glorious Afflictions. Good. I thought I might have missed that. So some notable spells and artifacts for Thricefold Battalion, Befoulement Battalion, and Munificent Wanderers. The Endless Gift. At the start of the battle phase, roll a dice for each wound allocated to this model. That turn and not negated on a 4+, the wound is healed. So that's an artifact. You can put it on a Great Unclean One, and say you did 15 wounds to it that turn, it didn't die, then they roll 15 dice in the battle shock phase, and for each 4+, they heal. So, yeah.
What's interesting about this is if the GUO decides to cut himself for +1 to cast, and then automatically heals it, he still gets to roll the dice to gain a wound.
Yes. Because he still suffered that wound that turn, didn't he? So
yes, he did.
It doesn't matter whether it was
healed or not.
Later healed or not. Another spell. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Hang on 2 seconds.
Oh, sure.
That should say spell there. So, just wait for the sky vessel to pass.
I'm sorry. I
don't know who it was, but it's so there's 2 notable spells for Thricefold Befoulment. One is Glorious Afflictions, which I think we mentioned earlier. Cast on a 5, which is quite notable because a lot of things cast on 7 in Nurgle, and that's quite easy to cast. Pick an enemy unit within 21 inches. Half that unit's move, run, and charge rolls, rounding up, and they can't fly until the Nurgle player's next hero phase.
Yes. So, money. So good. So good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, personally, I take this instead of favorite boxes now.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, against KO, I'm not that bothered about it too much because it doesn't stop me flying high.
It doesn't.
I don't want to be charging you anyway if you're Munificent Wanderers. So, I mean, the only thing where this would annoy me is if it stops me getting onto objectives.
And that's exactly what Nurgle's going to be using it for, is keeping off objectives.
Yeah. But, that's a powerful ability because it's like the Navigator's ability, but shorter range, and it does more stuff. Because it's not just move, and it's not just flying units, unlike the Navigator. So, yeah, powerful. And then the other spell we gave is called Plague School. Cast on a 6. If it's successful, then you roll 7 dice, and then for each 6 that you roll, you pick a different visible enemy unit to suffer D3 mortal wounds.
Different friend.
Different friend. A little bit of a typo there. So
this synergizes really well with the Rampant Disease Allegiance ability. It synergizes really well with Rotigus' spell, which I'm sure we'll see in a moment here. It's just you could be hitting 3. Units could be being hit by mortal wounds from across the board, several different ways. No range.
Yes, that's the important thing about this spell. Is I haven't missed that off in the summary of the spell here. there's just no range for this spell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Visible.
if like Nurgle goes first, and you're deployed in your corner, and you think, oh yeah, I'm deployed in my corner, I'm like 40 inches away from your wizards. No, it doesn't matter.
It's fine. I'll hit you with Plague Squall. I'll hit you with Rotigus. I'll hit you with Rampant Disease. There's 3d3 mortal wounds to several different units from across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a nice Warp Lightning Vortex you have there. It would be a shame if somebody were to nuke it from across the board.
So, I mean, with this combination of stuff, it's really a reminder to everybody that if Nurgle wants to build in that direction, they can play the just kill the heroes game too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and they don't have to do it at the shooting phase. So, Rotigus, he's a named version of a Great Unclean One, basically. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get the bell, so he doesn't give +3 to move. He doesn't get the +1 to cast.
No.
And he doesn't have the shooting attack. The shooting attack's nothing special anyway, is it? But he gets better melee, and he has a different spell. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Yeah, and his spell is really good.
Okay.
Really good.
Shall we talk about the spell then? So it's called Deluge of Nurgle. Cast on a 7. Nurgle 7. If it's cast, you roll 7 dice, so that's very similar to Plague Squall. For each roll that equals or beats the Deluge of Nurgle value shown on the damage table, which starts on a 4+, and I assume that gets worse.
Yes.
Yeah. You can pick an enemy unit that is visible to the caster, no range, and that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If this spell affects more than one enemy unit, you must pick a different enemy unit to suffer each set of D3 mortal wounds. So yeah, you roll 7 dice, fishing for 4+, and you can then put D3 mortal wounds on multiple units, but you can't put them all on the same unit. So you combine that with Plague Squall, which was D3 as well, wasn't it?
It was, but only on a 6.
Right. So yeah, but no range.
No range.
So you can be taking out heroes potentially turn 1, because you could do 6, but it's unlikely.
But then again, Rampant Disease.
Yes.
The Allegiance ability.
Yep.
So
which
there's
also
a lot
has
of
no
D3
range.
mortal wounds flying about. It's like
there is a
croak all over again.
Yes. So let's look at a list example. We've only got one for Thricefold Befoulment, which is good because we're drawing on 3 hours. This list is 5 drops, 124 wounds, so a lot less than Blightkings spam. 1980 points. 124 wounds though is still good. Like, it's not low by any means, and compared to KO, that's a good KO. A higher wound KO list would be around this. So it has 2 regular Great Unclean Ones, both of which have got Bile Blades and Doomsday Bells.
Mm-hmm.
The General has the command trait, which is One Last Gift. It has the Endless Gift artifact, and the spell is Favoured Boxes, which, if I remember correctly, is the one that is -1 to hit, wound, and save.
Yes.
Yep. And then the other one has the Muck Talon, which is the +1 to hit, and the spell is Glorious Afflictions, which we just talked about a minute ago, and I'm completely drawing a blank on it. What does Glorious Afflictions do?
Half move, run in, charge, and no fly.
Yes. So you have that one, the really good one, and then you have Rotigus, that also has that spell. He doesn't have anything else because he's named. And then you have Sorcerer with the Plague Squall, which we just mentioned. 30 Plaguebearers, and then 10 Plaguebearers, the Battalion, Umbral Spell Portal, and Geminids.
Yeah, so basically this list makes 2 decent castles. One of them kills you as you attack it. The other one just sits there and takes damage and sits on objectives. Typically, the one with One Last Gift, you're you're running up because of the Doomsday Bell. You're moving 7. You run up because you don't really need to shoot. So you're typically moving, about 10 inches. You get an objective and you sit there and you wait for somebody to charge you and then have some fun. The other one, you run up with another 30 Plaguebearers, but then you can shoot out the Geminids for a little bit of a defensive buff. And then all the while, Rotigus is kind of moving wherever he needs to be based on the battle plan, trying to stay close to the other two if possible so you can get off the super fart, which I affectionately call the Plague Storm. It's similar to the old Eldar, if anybody plays Warhammer 40k, the other game that this company makes, where the 3 fire prisms could put their beams together and then put out a super beam. It was pretty cool. This is just the super fart because it's that's essentially what it is. And their farts combined like some perverse Captain Planet.
Remind me again, what is the threat range on the spell portal? Like how far away do you
the first one within 12, but you want to be within 1 to cast through it, and the second one wholly within 18 of the first one.
Okay,
if you're in Shaiish, though, if you're within the realm of Shaiish, it's anywhere on the board.
Or cities,
So
you're popping that. Yeah, you're popping that spell portal out there, and then you're putting a 3d3 mortal wound line beam through anything. And then the sorcerer casts Plague Squall, and he hits things across the board. Rotigus makes it rain for another d3 mortal wounds on 4s up and on 4 pluses. And then you've got the Allegiance ability, which does mortal wounds on 4 pluses. All the while, you're trying to slam your head against the wall that's slowly killing you. It's a great list. It's a lot of fun to play.
This is a gun line with big blocks in front of it that are hard to kill. Basically,
that also kill you. Yeah.
And there's 7 spells there. 7 spell attempts each turn.
Yeah.
2 of them have got, or 4 of them have got +1 to cast.
Yes.
Rotigus and the Sorcerer's War Scroll spells don't have any range. The Umbral Spell Portal is 18-inch that you can get the first one away from, and then if you want to put their Plague Wind through, that's 14 inches from there. So you're looking at 32 inches for that, which is quite far. To be fair, 32 inches. And then drawing a line back through all the way to the caster, which is then healing that big block of stuff that's hard to kill as well, because it's affecting those to heal and doing mortal wounds to yourself or to the enemy units. That's basically what it is, isn't it? So
yeah.
I mean, I guess I know why you don't see this as competitive, because Croak and Teclis and stuff like that. But against KO, we're not going to stop you getting many of these spells off.
Well, Hearthguard Berserkers will run into 30 Plaguebearers, and sure, they'll take a couple of mortal wounds, which they're going to shrug off anyway. But there go 30 Plaguebearers in a green, misty, pustule-filled mist, and then they just wax the Great Unclean One off the table, and the other 20 Hearthguard Berserkers or whatever do the same thing, or the Oryx are blasting Rotigus into a green paste. I mean, it's a lot of fun if you're facing an army that just comes right at you, or if it does, when it comes right at you, it doesn't just obliterate you. So it can be pretty fun, but it's this list is like a 3-2 champion, right? Like this list will have some fun on the mid tables, but you're not gonna, you're not pushing 4-1 or 5-0 at a competitive GT with this list for sure.
Yeah.
So from a KO perspective, because when we talked about the Blight Cyst, we said don't target the Great Unclean One because he's too hard to kill for the benefit of what you get from it. Now there's 3 Great Unclean Ones here, basically. They're all quite hard to kill,
but they're not -2 to hit, though. That's the thing, right?
So the Plaguebearers are -2 to hit, but the thing is, if you kill the Great Unclean Ones, you've still at some point got to kill the Plaguebearers because they're going to be on the objectives.
Yeah, you get Rotigus out of there because he's dropping mortal wounds on you from everywhere. And then once you kill one Great Unclean One, the damage of the entire army goes down because you're reducing that line beam.
Yeah.
And then you try, unless you can just absolutely pummel the Great Unclean One with the Endless Gift in one go before he can use the Endless Gift, then you don't target him, right? Like, unless you've got him surrounded and you can just pour so many shots into him and then charge him with something, but you're still going to there's going to be a cost for that anyway because he's bouncing mortal wounds back at you. But, I mean, it's 1,000 points worth of Great Unclean Ones that don't do a whole lot of damage other than the magic phase. Ironically, Beric Nar loves to fight this list.
Yeah, because they've only got +1 to cast, and then Rotigus and the Sorcerer don't.
No.
So actually, Beric Nar is great against this. I mean, you might have...
Beric Nar might just shut this list down.
Yeah, a normal KO list might have Void Stone Orb.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
I mean, there's 7 spell attempts here. So,
but isn't that great, though, that Beric Nar just loves this list?
Okay.
They finally found the use for it. somebody who's writing the KO book got burned by a Thricefold Befoulment list one time in a tournament, and then he's like, "I'll show those guys. I'll devote a whole Skyport to teaching them."
Yeah, they should do this be a Nurgle versus KO like double box, and it'll be Beric Nar versus. The double box would just be like.
Another Brock box.
And a Great Unclean One and some Plaguebearers and some Thunderers. So you say target Rotigus first then?
Would you agree, Paul?
Yeah, I would get rid of Rotigus first.
Okay.
He's a really big threat.
What about the Sorcerer? Because the Sorcerer is going to be relatively easy to kill. And that Plague Score, even though it's on a 6, it's got no range and...
I feel like the Sorcerer is sort of a low value target. I would rather hit your other big bads first.
Okay.
Just kind of good luck if you run up against this list on 3 places of power, though. Like, this is a tough matchup for any army on 3 places of power.
Yeah. And then, and then the Plaguebearers target after you've taken out all of the Great Unclean Ones, or 2 of the Great Unclean Ones, or...
I think it depends on the situation, and it's going to depend on the battle plan. You need to really kind of think on your feet and be situational with it.
Because my concern with this is if you spend so long killing Great Unclean Ones that you then then you still got to kill the Plaguebearers to score any objectives, and you don't actually score any points, or you start scoring points in turn 4 or 5, and it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Nurgle really does, really focus on, I think, is if you're playing Nurgle well, you really are leaning hard into playing the objectives, and you just want to exploit every single turn that you can that your opponent is not on objectives. So if I can, if I'm playing against KO and I can force you off of an objective, or keep you away from the objectives, or keep you distracted and just shooting at me from a distance, that's good for me.
So, with the Blight Cyst, we said if you can take first turn, it's best to for KO. But you probably aren't likely to be able to. This style of list, I assume you probably are going to be able to, because it's only the heroes in the battalion, so you will get the choice. Is it
very good chance?
But does KO want to take turn 1 in this or not? Because depending where the Great Unclean Ones go, and then where Spell Portal, you can probably be out of range in your deployment from Spell Portal. So then it's only Rotigus and the Sorcerer that's going to do some mortal wounds, which if you've got Rotigus, you'll then heal up some. And then is it better to then get a double turn to try and take out those Great Unclean Ones? 2 turns of shooting.
The KO army needs to stay out of the 3d3 mortal wound beam, or it's toast. Like, that's just all there is to it.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, do you risk going inside the area of where they can put that 3d6 mortal wound beam if you think you're going to get the double turn, and then get your 12-inch guns in range and kill enough Great Unclean Ones?
I don't think you're gonna kill like more than one in the turn.
No,
because they swallow so much shots. Unless you have like a +4 charging battle ram ironclad that's gonna do.
No, that's what I'm saying. Do you
10 mortal wounds.
Do you risk it by giving away first turn and hope you get the double turn, or do you just go more cautious and try and shoot from a long range?
Yes,
because the trouble is, like, if I fly high to whatever point of the battle plan, and then I've got to be 24 inches away, whilst I'm not doing any shooting at you at all, will you dispel Umbral Spell Portal and then try and recast it?
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean,
so then I'm going to be in range of your 3D3.
You've got 7 casting attempts. I mean, sure, go ahead.
So wherever I go, unless I don't shoot you at all, or I've got drill cannons with and
you can cut yourself for +1 too.
Yeah. So unless I go more than 32 inches away, I'm going to get hit by your beam. And if I'm 32 inches away, I can't shoot you.
Except with the sky cannon, but yeah.
There's a sky cannon, you can shoot with the sky cannon, but then if I shoot with, I'm probably gonna have one ironclad, or maybe an ironclad and a frigate or 2 frigates. I'm not gonna kill a Great Unclean One with a sky cannon.
You gotta kill once you kill Rotigus, though, you dramatically reduce the damage this army does, because not only are you reducing the amount of mortal wounds that the super fart does, but you're also dropping the damage that he's doing as well. So that's why you target Rotigus in this list, and then you go after perhaps another GUO. Perhaps you start, trying to do some damage. I mean, doing damage, shooting Plaguebearers at -2 to hit. It's just, unless you got a flare pistol and you can really put a buttload of shots into them and then actually do damage through battle shock and just hope they don't roll a 1, then you're gonna have a bad time. So Rotigus has got to go. Then you start trying to focus down a Great Unclean One or not. Just do more damage they can heal, and try to play objectives. This army, this Munificent Wanderers list doesn't do great with like tons of objectives, like Scorched Earth or something. Scorched Earth is just a great, but even something like Focal Points where there's 5 objectives, it's not going to be overly crazy on. You got to be with any Nurgle list you face. You have to be smart with your target priority. Sorry, my batteries are low after 3 hours.
Yeah. So what Rotigus heals as well, doesn't he?
Yes. He heals D3 every turn.
So the thing, what I'm thinking is it doesn't matter where I go on the table, because if I go far enough away that you can't hit me by dispelling the spell portal and putting it down somewhere new, then I need to I'm going to have to go somewhere where I'm going to have to be hit by the Plague Wind, unless what's the range on Plague Wind without the spell portal? 14 inches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you stay 14 inches away and out of range of where the spell portal is now, because if you go outside of the range of where they could put spell portal, then you can't do enough shooting damage, because Rotigus will heal up. So you've got to be more than 40 inches away, but less than 24, so you might as well be 18 inches away, basically, to get any 18-inch guns in.
Right. I mean, whether it's this list or the Blight Cyst list, Nurgle has got an innate advantage to KO, but KO has the advantage of being able to take out the buffs that Nurgle depends on. So you really, really have to lean into your strength, which is focused damage. pinpoint accurate with your damage, as opposed to having to, be limited by space like most other armies are.
The other thing is you can be in range to shoot Rotigus, but not in range to be hit by the other two Great Unclean Ones with their spells, their Plague Winds, if they do recast the spell portal. And at least if you make them dispel the spell portal and recast it, then they're using spell attempts. And then they're doing less other spells at you.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's much else to say about this list, is there? Hopefully not, because
I think we covered it.
Yeah.
So, general conclusion is lots of bodies, whatever type of Nurgle list it is, at least hard to kill, including the heroes.
Lots of debuffs.
Yeah, and you do have to try and target the heroes. Just make sure you try and target the right ones, and make sure you do kill them, because if not, they will heal most likely, depending on what the ones they are. If it's Blight Cyst, don't target the Great Unclean Ones. If it's Munificent, if it's Thricefold, you do, but you target Rotigus first.
Don't rely on damage in shooting. Try battle ram, try bombs, try phosphorite bomblets. Mortal wound output that ignores hit modifiers.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to have in your list, regardless of whether you're playing against Nurgle or not, because negative modifiers to hit are all over the place.
A ramming ironclad with an engine master in tow is going to just F up a Great Unclean One. So, I mean, that's ones what you drop in, you shoot, you drop in, you hopefully have a skyhook, you drop in, you shoot him up, and then you charge in. That GUO's dead, if he's not encircled in Plaguebearers. If you can get a charge in on him with a ram and an engine master, that GUO is going down for sure.
What could be interesting against those 20 Blight King blocks is a Purple Sun.
Yeah, that's
removes models, just slain. So they're losing 4 wounds per each 6 that you roll. So you're gonna remove 3, maybe 4. So that's 10 to 12 models just with a spell on the bottle. Purple Sun.
Purple Sun will mess up some Blight Kings, that's for damn sure.
Yeah. It's a shame that 9, because you would love to be able to battle shock them off, but they're quite strong against battle shock, because 4 wounds apiece is actually hard to kill large numbers of models. You do 10 wounds to Blight Kings, you kill 2. You do 10 wounds against another unit, you kill 10 models. So, 2 to a battle shock roll compared to adding 10 is massive. And then especially when they're already bravery 9, they might as well be battle shock immune.
Yeah, it's very, very rare for them to fail a battle shock test.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we covered everything. So, I mean, and unless anyone's got any last minute tips they want to quickly share? No?
I mean, I would say that the other thing that you need to watch out for that's like a whole separate show is like what happens when you start throwing Slaves to Darkness units into Nurgle. And that's like a whole other build that like is like stuff that we haven't even talked about. It's not really that popular right now, but it can be something to watch out for, because that's another list that's going to be like 1 drop and have all the answers, and it's just a different flavor.
There's one thing we didn't talk about, which is Be'lakor, because Be'lakor could drop into like a Blight Cyst list
very easily.
Not for long. The new model is so big, he's going to be 420 points. So.
Well, that's why we haven't talked about it, because he's going to get a War Scroll change as well, and But whatever happens with the new Be'lakor, the likelihood is he can be in a Nurgle armor, I would imagine.
I've been writing a lot of I've been writing Nurgle lists, and I was I don't know. People didn't really seem to think it was great, but I thought it was awesome to take a Blight Cyst list, and instead of or in addition to a GUO, to have the Slaanesh Glutos model, because it's another -1 to hit bubble that comes from him. He can keep up with the army because turn 2 he can run and charge, and he slaps in melee. So there's a whole lot of not obvious buffs and advantages to having Glutos in a Nurgle army for sure.
Well,
yep, he's already been popping up in tournament lists.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is in the Battle for Copenhagen TTS tournament last weekend, the list that came third was Nurgle. I can't remember if it was actually the Blight Cyst Battalion or not. There was a lot of Blightkings, so I presume it was. But it had Be'lakor and it had Glutos or Salon or whatever his name is in it as well. And
Fatacross.
Did it have Catacross as well?
Fatacross.
Oh, Fatacross.
Fatacross.
That's his name.
Yeah,
because he has like the whole diorama, awesome model again, like Catacross.
That's so funny.
But he's overweight.
He's a little portly.
Okay, so I think we covered as much as we can in one show. Hopefully, we've given KO players enough information so that when they face up against Nurgle, they feel prepared and they know what's going on. So I hope this has been helpful. Paul, thank you very much for joining.
Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Hopefully we can have you on again at some point, whether it's to talk about Slaves to Darkness again or Nurgle again, or maybe, you'll get some games in with your KO. If the Nurgle COVID goes away soon enough.
Yeah, all you need to do is win a tournament with KO and you'll be back on the show.
You don't even necessarily.
Well, don't give him incentive to not win with KO by saying he'll be back on.
Yes, but if you want to see more of Paul, then his channel is Radio Free Hammerhall.
If you've suddenly gotten Nurgle curious after this 3.5 hours of discussion of it.
Yeah. Well, even if you're not Nurgle curious, then you've got some KO videos. And lots of other cool stuff.
If you want to see his Nurgle army, there's videos of it I've seen.
Okay, yeah, so you can see what some of these Nurgle units look like. Cool. Thank you, Matt and Max, for joining as usual. Thank you everyone for watching. So please hit like and subscribe and all of that, time kind of stuff. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right.